1, 2,
Standing
go.
by.
Hey, everybody, you're listening to and possibly watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in or possibly stream in. It's the end of August. We're all excited about that. And fall's coming up.
Are we excited about that?
I'm excited about 67 degrees temperatures in the morning.
Yeah,
like,
I'm very
excited.
excited.
It was amazing.
But like our hottest days are going to be like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday that we've had this year. So
Gotcha.
yeah, I don't do like anything over 78, and I'm like fragile flower. Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, so hot. But let's not stay on that anyway. So. Especially because we have a guest with us, and it's the guest that's been with us the most times on our show, whether you knew that, Steve, or not.
Really?
Yes, it's Steve Bryant back with us to tell us about the next issue of Evie and the Helsings. And you may know Steve from Athena Voltaire or many of the other projects he's been part of in the past. And Steve, we're very happy to have you.
You guys got to raise your standards. I didn't realize I've been on the most. But thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I've had some really fun discussions, not just like all the self-promotion nonsense, but like discussing the real stuff behind all these kind of stories that we make or that we read, and it's always a great time.
Okay, well, since you've been on so often, everybody knows what the hell happened with your story. So we don't need to go through it again. We'll just not the episode. It's always look at Steve Bryant again.
I thought it was Blue Beetle. Why this guy?
All right. I got the interview baton. I'm always bogarting stuff, so I'm going to throw it to our Steve to get things going. Yes,
Me?
you.
Oh,
yes, you.
Awesome. Steve to Steve. This is the Steve and Steve. Hey, well, so Evie and the Helsings, #2. You had kickstarted the first issue. I think it was towards the end of last year, beginning of this year.
Beginning of this year.
Beginning of this year that was completed. Everything's been sent out, so everybody has had the joy of getting to read the first issue of Evie and the Helsings. But for those people who may not have checked it out and taking a chance on a new IP, how would you describe Evie and the Helsings for these new potential people? And just so everybody knows, we will be putting in the chat the Kickstarter link because we've got, I think it's 2 weeks to go before it's completed. Yeah, so really excited about that. What would your elevator pitch? What would your enticing description of Evie and the Helsings be for a new reader?
Putting on my convention carnival sideshow Barker hat. For generations, the Van Helsing family has protected humanity from the things that go bump in the night. The last protector has fallen, and the mantle goes to their heir. Unfortunately, Evie Van Helsing just wants to rock. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It just we're looking at the archetypal monster hunter, and I'm a sucker for legacy heroes. So we're kind of playing with that trope. Not issue 2, but issue 3, we start finding out more about the backstory of the family. But yeah, it's, Evie's essentially a legacy hero, but instead of hunting vampires, she wants to keep playing in her hair metal band in LA. And so it's, what I always tell people is that it's Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets This Is Spinal Tap by way of Ash versus Evil Dead. But like that was what I originally pitched it to Don as. But the problem is, as we started talking about it and we started fleshing out these characters, we both kind of fell in love with them. And it's not as campy or over the top or cheesy as I'd originally planned it, because the damn characters took over. So it's been fun. That's worst
awesome.
element in the history of comics. Just
that you end up putting in all these extra like details in there and like throwing some extra flavor on it, and yeah, I think that's going to entice a lot of people. And you mentioned Don Cardenas,
yes,
who is
who
the
may or may
co-creator on
not
this.
join us. I'm sorry.
He might be joining us. Ooh.
He's putting the kids to bed and he's fighting a nasty head cold. So I said he might be unavailable for if his schedule complies, and then on social media he corrected me and said he has a head full of snot, but he might try to make it after he puts the kids to bed. So yeah, now I feel bad. I've spoiled that for him. But I'm sorry, you were going to ask about Don.
Yeah, so Don and you working together on on this property and on the book together, and then of course now we're on issue 2 for this. I know Don's not here to mention it, but like, what brought you two together for this book in particular?
So, and I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but like the original working concept was Evie Van Helsing, Vampire Slayer. And, so it was a riff on the whole Van Helsing thing, which has been told a million times on stories, but I'm a sucker for a bad pun. And I kind of liked like in my head, I could see all of that. And I thought, this is the dumbest thing I've ever thought of. And I was never sure about reaching out to a collaborator. And then Eddie died, and it just seemed like it was in really bad taste, but it kept scratching at the back of my head. And I've known Don for years and watched him grow as an artist. We almost worked together on something that we collaborated on a few years back. And the guy just kept posting all these cool guitar videos. And I was like, well, he is steeped in the metal stuff. So he is kind of the ideal person because he draws, he understands all of this stuff. So I sent him a text and I was like, I've got this idea. It may be the dumbest thing I've ever thought of, or it may be really cool. And he said, send it on. And like within seconds, he was on board. It was Don that came up with the idea of gender swapping, because I did say, well, is it in bad taste if we do Eddie? And he said, how about Evie? And I was like, oh my God, you're brilliant. And I'm pretty sure that he's the one that came up with the title Evie and the Helsings, because originally the title was just Van Helsing with like the Van Halen style, Van Halen 2 wings on the logo, because that made me laugh. But yeah, Don named it. Don gender swapped the character, and then we just bounced ideas back and forth and completely fell in love with this supporting cast too.
That's awesome. And before we continue, we do have a particular guest who has just popped into the green room.
Hey!
Should we invite him in and say hello?
Please and thank you.
Oh, there he is.
I was just singing your praises,
Everything
dude.
Steve said was a lie. I don't know what he said, but it was a lie. Dirty lie.
I said that you're responsible for it being Evie instead of Eddie, and that you're the one that came up with the title of the series as Evie and the Helsings. If memory serves, I'm pretty sure it was you.
Yeah. I was pretty I don't want to say pushy, but I was pretty like, this is what it is. And then you're just kind of like, I guess. Yeah, okay, I'm not gonna fight you.
But
welcome,
yeah.
Don. Welcome. We're great to have you on the show. here with Steve talking about this really great property. And I'm gonna pass it on. I know, like I just asked Steve a couple questions, but I'm gonna pass it on to Caleb here so that he can continue the line of questioning that we're gonna be drilling you guys with. But and talking about this great property, this great work you guys are putting together.
So Don, one thing that you did miss on here is Steve was saying how he's a good fan of puns, and that happened just after he was saying, hey, Don's got a little bit of a head cold, and I missed the great opportunity to go, that's not cool. But had I known that it was a good opportunity for puns, I would have done that. So I want to do a little pitch for you guys. So I was one of your Kickstarter backers for the first book. So not only did I get this awesome comic, but I got a lot of the swag that you guys sent too. Some great stickers that folks can get their hands on. You got all the different variant covers, a couple of the smaller ones that you guys are going to send out to Kickstarter backers. So first and foremost, kind of one of the things I want to know. Is there new swag? Is there new stuff that folks can expect to get with the Kickstarter? Like, what are you guys doing as far as that goes? Or not that just the book by itself isn't amazing, because it was, and I completely want the second issue. But what are you offering on that regard?
Well, Steve is a big fan. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
So and I'm very much like, oh, let's add more work onto ourselves than we could possibly ever do. So Steve's much more level-headed about that. So we are kind of keeping the same theme. So, the covers are available as postcards with the stretch marks and the stickers and things like that. And so we're kind of keeping, the rewards, similar. We have a different batch of digital books coming with this stretch goal we just hit at 9,000. And the only one that's really, really, I'm really, not that I'm excited for all of them, but I'm really excited for hopefully getting the 11K stretch goal, and that is a second Evie and the Helsing song that I'm eager to finish up and write and all that. And I've already said this publicly once, so Steve's not going to be mad if I say it again. But ultimately, we would like to use this momentum we have with these first two campaigns and get to a collected edition. And when we get a collected edition, hopefully have enough theme behind us to get an actual female singer hired, and she can put vocals and on these tracks, because I'm working on that stuff, but it's all stuff that's it's got to come together and things like that. I got to kind of draw the book too, so it's got to take a few steps behind everything else. But I'm really excited about that. But yeah, we're kind of just like keeping what's worked for us.
Yeah.
And that is keeping the postcards of the covers, because I really like those for myself as well. I know a lot of I spoke to a few other people who backed it who really like those, and it's I'm going to be dropping some of these off to my favorite comic shop in the world, Challengers Comics in Chicago. And speaking to Patrick there, I told him, like, well, we'll make sure it's all bagged up with the postcards and the stickers and everything, and he seems to be really excited about that for for whoever wants to pick up the book at the store. So yeah, it was very much nothing ginormously new in terms of those things.
Right.
Though there are some different tiers that we've had in this campaign that we did not have in the last one. Mainly a cameo tier, which was bought out. We had 2 cameos offered, and those were purchased. So I'm gonna be excited to draw those. And then we actually have original art, because I listened to the last time Steve was on here, and you guys were asking about original art, and I wanted to make sure I didn't disappoint everybody. Now, there's not a lot of original art.
I'll be in Chicago in October. We should meet. You should let me come souvenir shop out of your portfolio. Because, and I'm not joking about that. I love your art and have for a long time, and I think you're a phenomenal artist. And actually, kind of like Steve was mentioning earlier, I actually got to know you through kind of a pseudo introduction through our friend Wendy Freeman, who we name drop on here as much as possible. But she didn't, she said, hey, I know this cool comic artist who also likes some of the same music that you do. You should check it out. So that's actually how I came to you, was being a fan of some of the same similar music and some of your bands and stuff. So I love that, and would love to in October to actually come and like meet you. We can talk tunage and all that kind of fun stuff. But
yeah, if I can make it happen, I certainly will.
Oh, absolutely. And no pressure on that. But I was going to ask, so I know a lot of artists, while they are working on just any kind of book, whether they're talking about a big two book, superhero fair, real life, whatever, they listen to a lot of music. And with a comic like this that is so steeped in music, what are you listening to, or do you listen to music while you draw? But like, can you talk about some of maybe the musical influences that you pulled from to kind of help create these characters? And Steve, pitch in too. I want to know if y'all have like solid feelings about Van Hagar. So where do you guys come from with that? What are you listening to while you're creating a book about music?
I could probably go way too long on this, so I'll let Steve go first. On the subject.
I don't mind Van Hagar at all, and I know I'm usually in the minority with that. But you guys ever see the movie Fanboys?
Yeah.
You know the bit when they get in the van and they're looking through Hutch's cassette collection, and they said, all you have in here, and Bill's going to kill me for this, all you have in here is Rush. Where's your variety? And Hutch says, it's Rush. That's variety. That may be a big portion of my playlist. But no, our editor, Chris Murrin, turned me on to Dream Theater, which was really cool too. So I've got, between like Rush and early 90s Queensryche and stuff like that. That's kind of my, my take on metal. I think Don is a lot more steeped in it. But like, in the mid to late 80s, I played in bands, really bad bands, before I realized that as a musician, I make a pretty good illustrator, and left that behind. So I call myself a recovering bass player. So I that's kind of the part that influenced me on the book. But in terms of what I'm listening to, if I'm writing, I have to listen to instrumental stuff. And if I'm drawing, I can listen to, I can't get too keyed up, especially if I'm inking, because I still need to, pull decent lines and not bounce around too much. Okay, I defer to Don, the metal maestro.
I'm not the hugest Van Halen fan in general, but I don't dislike them.
Right.
I like a few of the tunes, and I like plenty of Van Hagar. I have very fond memories of the song Right Now playing while we were it was like stuck on a loop while when I was in high school, our wrestling team was downstate, and we were like running for warm-ups, and it was just like stuck on a loop. So we were just like it was like that How I Met Your Mother bit with the 5,000 Miles song, where like getting tired of it and like, wait, it'll come back around.
Yeah.
And so I tried giving the Gary Sharon stuff a fair shake. I recently checked back onto it not too long ago, and it wasn't bad stuff. I mean, Gary Sharon's a hell of a talented singer, but if I were to keep it in the Van Halen family, actually the latest Wolfgang Mammoth WVH album is absolutely fantastic.
Yes, it is. Yes,
it is absolutely stellar. And even his first album was great too. And being a dad myself, like I'm only just now being able to even listen to the to Distance without like just being a complete mess afterwards, which is a song he wrote about his dad. And the video is like, I defy anyone to like not just be a puddle of tears at the end of that video with that. But so I like my Van Halen. In terms of Evie, I think in terms of listening to, I pulled a lot of Runaways, a lot of Joan Jett, a lot of Hailstorm, a lot of like the Guns N' Roses type, kind of like greasy, kind of metal hair, hard rock kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when I'm working, I don't get a ton of time to like sit down, put headphones on, and work unless it's late at night, or now that my kids are back in school, a couple hours during the day. And even then, it's not really a lot of music lately. It's mainly like YouTube videos or things like that, just to kind of have background noise on. I find I listen to music most when I'm doing like layouts and things like that. And that tends to drive a lot of the a lot of what I'm thinking when I'm doing that, and it didn't, I don't have to have instrumentals on or anything like that. And it could really be, it's funny because I end up drawing the most like gross, bloody stuff when I'm listening to like Tegan and Sarah in churches. And and then I'm drawing like heartwarming scenes between people, and I'm listening to like symphonic deathcore. It's just it's just I don't know why that dichotomy happens in my brain, but
nothing says love like Dimmu Borgir. Nothing says love like that, man. I love it.
There's a recent band called Orbit Culture.
Yep.
Who I absolutely adore. I love that band so much, and they're a band though I can't listen to them outside of the gym, just because they work so well in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to get tired of it. Like no, I found this. I can hold on to this for now. But they are just fantastic, and I know there's in terms of metal, but I also like swing all the way to stuff that's more traditional heavy metal stuff. Like the latest Spirit Adrift album is like really traditional style heavy metal. When I say traditional, I think things like not necessarily like Judas Priest or Maiden, but like that vibe.
Right.
There's singing, there's melodic solos, there's riffing. There's not like a lot of extremeness to it. And I do find myself really part of it is also why I kind of wanted to change Eddie to Evie, is because I'm really drawn to like female fronted metal bands.
Mm-hmm.
Because for some reason, like when even these female singers are doing those low guttural, just nasty vocals,
OTEP is a great example.
OTEP, Arch Enemy, recent bands I've gotten to like Crypta, Nervosa.
Mm-hmm.
These are more death metal type bands. But stuff like Spirit Box, where they also do really great clean singing, but also like just killer lows. And because I feel like when women do that, it feels more justified, because so many male vocalists now they do the low thing, but it's just like I'm doing the low voice. I'm doing the thing I have to do. There seems to be more behind it, and there's plenty of male singers who sing with that kind of like intensity that I enjoy, like Joe Duplantier from Gojira.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't know his name, but the lead singer of Orbit Culture and guitar player, he does that. Like they have that pain behind them, or that emotion behind them. So
I feel like Randy Blythe fits in there a little bit as well.
Yeah, exactly.
He does that really well. So
like he puts it out.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I'm done. I'll keep going. Just go. Move along.
Can I interject one thing?
Yeah.
Before Don got here, Steve asked me what made Don the right person for the job. You just heard.
Right.
Right there. Yeah.
Super drawing and super depth on the subject matter. So yeah. Okay, I'll shut up now.
So I do have to mention we have some people here in the chat who are ringing in. So we've got John Runyon joining us, Comic Book Bears Assemble. Thanks a lot, John. And going back to one of the covers from the first campaign for issue number 1, the Tomb of Dracula style cover is everything. I love that. Yes, we all do, John. It was awesome. We had Dan Bryant joining us, or maybe not joining us. Dudes, I'm at my kids' back to school night. Stop the show until I'm done. So, of course, we're going to have to pause. We'll wait here, wait until he gets back, and then we'll be good. And then, of course, our friend John Westhoff here. Did someone say we're starting a band?
Who said drummers could come within here?
Exactly. Well, and then here, if only Don had another show where
if only there was somewhere else I talked about metal all the time, some sort of podcast or something, or newsletter that's available where I talk about these things.
Do you like beverages, Don?
We definitely need to pitch it. So.
Oh, by the way, one other thing. Much love to Wendy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Always.
I'm super excited to get to see her in October. I'm hitching a ride for reasons, but that's one of the first places I'm going, just to give her a big hug. I want to take kind of that same similar question though, if I can, and kind of flip it, because we talked about the music aspect, but so much of the book it's Van Helsing, right? So we're talking about a vampire slayer and Dracula. So, and we may have talked about this a little bit before. I've slept since then, so forgive me if I have, and I don't want to cover old ground, but I would love to hear you guys talk a little bit about that aspect. Like, what are your roots in the monster genre or the horror genre? And specifically, if that's related to comics in some way. I mean, I've got a shelf full of Swamp Thing, Man Thing right down here. We talk about Tomb of Dracula. Where did each of you kind of get on the boat, so to speak, when it comes to like horror? Is it a film-based love or just kind of multimedia? Where does that come from?
You start,
Steve.
Tom.
You want to go first? You want to go
No,
first? Okay.
you
Oh, what's that?
I said you go because I'll probably.
Okay. Okay. Well, again, I'll probably ramble on, so feel free to cut me off. When it comes to like this, like general like monsters and stuff, it's way back when. But if I had to put down like my canon event, so to speak, Monster Squad.
Oh, nice.
That was the one that did it for me because it had all the monsters and legitimately the best creature design for the creature, not the creature, Black Lagoon, hands down, my favorite. But I do, I have, the Blu-ray box set of all the old school black and white Universal monsters. I love those. I grew up with those. I just love monsters and horror, and it's really kind of funny because I grew up, I'm going to be, 41 on Sunday. So I grew up right in that prime time of like everyone who slipped the cable guy an extra $50 got the hot box, so you got all the channels. And I was just unsupervised enough to be up all night watching whatever schlocky horror movies were being played on HBO and Cinemax and Showtime and whatever. So my love of horror and all that tends to be just like the real, like, B movie kind of just gore and, the Evil Dead kind of stuff and all that. And my wife, who also loves horror, but she loves the paranormal stuff, like, like The Omen and The Exorcist. And that's the stuff that makes me fall asleep. So it's like we're trying to find our happy medium there. But that's the kind of stuff that really drew me in. And I was never a huge fan of vampires, to be honest. Just because I just didn't like the whole thing. And I realized it's the romantic version of vampires I don't like. I like the down and dirty vampires. I like the 30 Days a Night vampires. I like the Blade 2 vampires where they're just nasty little fuckers and they're just like, sorry, they're just gross. But, when working with Evie, I felt like, well, maybe we can do both, So I have a lot of headcanon for myself that is we have both kinds of vampires. We have the more kind of trollish looking, nasty little guys. And then we have, our more refined, quote unquote, sexy vampires and stuff like that. So, and, they can kind of go in between and all that. So that's where, I felt like, okay, here's my into this. And I really, Steve just let me go. He's just like, is this our vampires? Okay, cool. Yeah.
So you're more Lost Boys than Interview. Steve, where do you land on that? Which one do you dig?
Oh, if we're talking vampire movies, especially from the 80s, there's only one correct answer, and that's Near Dark. And that's a hill I will die on.
That is a good one. That we'll give that one.
Bill Paxton, Lance Henriksen, the most quotable vampire movie of all time.
There's another one. Yeah.
What
was it? It was with Bruce Campbell. I think Sundown or something. They made like synthetic blood. I remember like I've seen it's like one of those movies where you think it's a fever dream, and then you realize, oh, this was an actual movie that existed. And this isn't like a Sinbad Shazam thing. This movie actually exists. I had to look it up. I'm like, oh yeah, it is. And I'm reading a synopsis. I'm like, this sounds kind of familiar, but like in my head, you just have those things. And I've, one of the kind of rabbit holes I've been going down with are these horror YouTube channels who are like going through these old movies, like places called like Good Bad Flicks and a few other horror channels that just kind of bring up all these older movies. And I'm seeing these things. I'm like, oh my God, I actually remember I saw that. Like I couldn't tell you anything before that, but I'm seeing this like, oh God, this is familiar. Like it's almost like because my memory of my childhood is real crappy. But then I see these things. I'm like, oh man, I watched a lot of terrible. Where were my parents? First and foremost. Well, I know exactly where they were, but yeah, it's definitely that's my perspective. Sorry, Steve, I didn't mean to jump in on your part. So
no, I guess my monster origin story. As a kid, I'm a tad older than Don. No, I grew up like with the Universal Monster movies being on like the late night Friday night. There wasn't a horror host, but it was, you know, Central Illinois. They ran, you know, these things because they were cheap. I think it was like the ABC affiliate. So, you know, I saw The Mummy, and you know, Creature from the Black Lagoon is still my favorite Universal Monster movie. So I saw all that, but you know, growing up in the 70s and 80s, just seeing the commercial for The Exorcist on TV freaked my shit out way too much, you know, as a kid during that period. So horror wasn't really safe for me. And as a comic book nerd in the 70s, falling in love with you know, Bronze Age Marvel books, hitting every garage sale I could, I came across the Marvel monsters from the 70s. And I think that was kind of the tripwire for me, because it felt like the superhero books, but there were, you know, you had Mike Plug doing pretty much all of them. He did Ghost Rider, he did Frankenstein's Monster, he did Werewolf by Night originally, and just coming across those kind of opened me up again to those creatures. And it's funny, I fell in love with slasher movies, I guess around like the early 2000s. I had avoided them when I was in high school. It was like the early days of being separated and newly divorced. I had a 3-year-old kid at the time who I would see every other week. We would do entire weeks, but I was really bummed out when I was alone. I would just sit and draw comics, and I was drawing on one of the weeks when she wasn't coming over. I was drawing comics. I had AMC on back before they discovered The Walking Dead, but they would do horror marathons. And I watched every Friday the 13th movie back to back to back to back to back. Slasher movies are my comfort food at this point. I fell in love with the genre because it's just this heavy-handed morality play that's charming as hell and drenched in blood too. But you know, it was that. But yeah, you know, along the way, Near Dark and the Raimi stuff and all that, I still I don't think that I could watch movies with Don's wife, because the paranormal, supernatural, demonic possession stuff just is at odds with the upbringing I had as a kid, I guess, and it just freaks the shit out of me.
So the Pope's Exorcist is off the table for you.
No, but I am wondering how he got the gig. If it was, you know, just on resume, or did he have to audition? But no,
I've heard that movie is kind of nuts. I'm not sure if that's true or not. So
I've heard. I haven't seen it. I've heard it is.
If something is just like, this is what, you know, like that might pique my interest a little bit. One of my buddies, and a fantastic writer himself and musician, Dalton Deshane, he has a fantastic podcast called Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe? And it started with him and his with them and their co-host Dylan Roth, and they're both writers, and they basically said, okay, the Dark Universe they tried to do back with The Mummy in 2010 or 2012 or whatever, crashed and burned. What if it didn't? So they take The Mummy, and then they each take turns pitching another movie in that universe. And they're cool. On their second, they just finished the end of their second phase, and it is one of the most entertaining podcasts I've ever listened to. The best episode came pretty early on, and it's their take on The Invisible Man, starring John C. Reilly. And it's a heist movie, but the twist at the end, it's like you almost get mad that these movies aren't going to be made, you know. And they had a really great dark gothic take on Frankenstein. And so, like, you know, if someone's a fan of horror movies and that kind of stuff, I cannot recommend that podcast enough. They really put their love of stuff into that. And yeah, it's just really great. And then they also occasionally will talk about, they'll have episodes where they kind of like release where they actually hash out the big event movie beforehand, and then like you get to hear how they came across to make the decisions they did with all that. And it's all done and all in fun and stuff, but it's like, man, these guys are they even have like they had a musical episode where they actually had a couple friends come and do a few songs and stuff, because their take on the Phantom was the Phantom of the Opera. That was the name of their take, and it was actually really, really good. And I hate musicals, and I just it's not a full length musical or anything, but it's like 2.5 songs or something, but this is really well done,
So they're not pitching in real time. They prep before they do it.
Oh yeah. They prep before they do it. Yeah, they eat what they call them scriptments, like 70 pages. Like it's a lot of work, these guys. But yeah, it's just really, really fun. And at this point there's just tons of episodes for everyone to go check out. But I always have to talk about that whenever something remotely close to that comes up, because I think for the amount of work those two people put into that podcast, it deserves to be celebrated because it's really good. So
file off the serial numbers, and they should just do them as comics.
Oh, there's a couple of things there that I know Dalton, they said they're gonna be doing something like that. So
excellent,
very cool.
So
yeah.
Okay, well,
I've
been telling Steve all day I feel like garbage. I'm just, and I got like a third wind, like some extra coffee in me. I know I sound a bit congested, but I'm not like draining everywhere. So I'm just like really excited. I'm not feeling absolutely like garbage. So I'm a little more excitable right now. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
That's definitely good.
All right. Well, with me in the third slot here, unfortunately, Caleb took all the material I was going to do for you guys. So
I'm sorry.
Let me just remix it a little bit. In terms of stories about female-fronted groups, now we have, there's a catalog from, something as award-winning as Daisy Jones in the Six, something as indie-minded as Love and Rockets, something as lowbrow as Gem and the Holograms. Just asking you guys, were there, whether it was an influence or not, or do you have any particular favorites of, whether it's graphic literature or something else regarding female-fronted groups?
You want to go?
No, you go ahead.
Love and Rockets is, is it for me. That's when Don was drawing the first issue and I was getting pages in, I got all itchy and I had to go and reread a lot of that early Jaime stuff because it's so good. And actually, my boss at the university I teach at has a book. I have not yet read it, but I'm really looking forward to it. Her name's Rose Marshak, and the book is called Play Like a Man. She's the bass player for a punk / alternative band called Poster Children. And so it talks about touring in the early. Oh.
Here's the piece over there. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm psyched about reading that because I keep thinking, should we ask her for a quote? But I haven't had the balls to do so. But yeah, Love and Rockets in terms of comic music stuff is still my, top of the heap. Don.
Surprisingly, I don't really have a lot of depth with that. But I'll still talk a lot right now. A lot of where I'm coming from with the book and all that is I'm definitely a child of pop-up video and behind the music and knowing so much about these things and enjoying a lot of these bands and just kind of like deep diving into the histories. That's where a lot of my appreciation and I guess the vibe I'm trying to get comes from. I know several people who are just absolute Love and Rockets devotees, and I have started it a few times, and people have told me like starting off it's not what it becomes,
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, but I haven't gotten to that point. I'm sure I've seen all the iconic images, that the one cover on stage and all that. Steve and I have talked about doing something with that. So I definitely know I need to go back and check that stuff out, but I don't have the too much experience with like at least with the comics or anything like that with all that, but I'm more than open to hearing more suggestions too, because I'd like to know.
Yeah,
If we ever
and I can appreciate that, because I think the liftoff with Love and Rockets is difficult, because just those first 3 issues will take you 3 days to read. Just the printing in them is so small in there, but
no,
it's definitely worth the journey. Definitely worth the journey.
Sorry, I'm stepping all over you. Can I interject one thing?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Your show.
If we ever get to pitch this for animation, I think I would describe it as Heavy Metal Gem and the Holograms versus vampires. So, just for a touchstone, I like that comparison, but I never really watched the show.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I'm old.
I mean, I could picture that. It's like synergy, fuck them up. Like I would love that. That would be great. Like she just like transforms into like actual punk and starts.
I would have said,
stakes.
I would have said Metalocalypse meets Gemini Holograms, but
There you go.
Oh, that would be great too.
Well, what I love about this conversation is we are talking about these 80s, just rock and punk groups, right, and stuff we listed.
Mm-hmm.
But having read the book too, there's some really good 90s materials, and like there's a lot of garbage to me in reading, and the band, not
yeah.
So let me make that clear. I'm talking about the band
100%,
garbage, right?
100%,
Yeah, there's a lot of garbage, right? Female fronted like 90s grunge stuff. You have. It's funny. Actually, when I found the book, I fell in love because Peter Steele. I saw a character. It's like, oh, that's Peter Steele. I read the book and it's like, oh, it's hey, we wanted this to be kind of a Trent Reznor looking, which it also works. But the whole like hair, and I was like, okay, there's like 90s goth metal punk, which that's mine. Me and Typo Negative are all day long, right? And so, but there's that 90s feel to it too. I mean, I know we're talking about glam rock, and I know like it is based in that Gem and the Holograms, and the seeds of that are there, but you guys also treat it respectfully, right? Like you're not trying to do a Steel Panther treatment of that era either. No. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, it's the character you're referring to, the goth guy, Lazarus. There's a real fun short story I hope I get to write and have one of my friends draw for something involving him, and a lot has to do with the decisions I've made in terms of depicting him. I'll just leave it at that. But when it came to like just like filling out all of the other bands, that's the most fun part. It's like, okay, first of all, like when I was in the first issue, there's a scene where they're kind of backstage and all these posters and stuff. First thing I said is like, who's got a band? Who do I know who's got a band? Send me your logos, send me your names, whatever. And it's filled with people's bands, their logos, even like the crowd scene right before the big concert towards the end of the first issue. People are standing with their t-shirts, like the logos on there are from my friends' bands, and it's the fun of that, and then also making up band names to put in there. I recently had a thread on Twitter where I was kind of going over all my favorite fake band names that I put on there. And then I'm really looking forward to just like putting in more of my friends and fellow creators who I know are musicians too, as bands as we come across them and all that, Patrick Brower from Challengers Comics. He's a metal singer. His brother George also sings, and they have their nephew Parker did a lot of stuff for their YouTube for reviews and stuff. And, I told him like, you guys are going to be a 3-piece trio called Tower of Brower, my buddies, Gavin Guidry and Gavin Smith, fantastic artists. I have a band involving them, Gavin and not Gavin, so I just need to find out who's not Gavin, and of course our mutual friend, Wendy, she's going to show up, of course, our buddy, Dave Jordan, I'm going to toss him in there too. Steve and I are going to show up at some point. I don't know if I'm going to do 80s mullet denim Steve, which I am not making fun of Steve. You look the part, man. It looks good. Like it's nothing to be ashamed of. You look like a cool 80s guy holding a Rickenbacker. I mean, that's classic. Mike Norton, he's going to be in there. So yeah, so I have all the references I want to bring from my friends and fellow musicians, but I also have all the bands that I grew up with listening to in the 90s and all that. So I did want to have the goth guys. I wanted to have the grungier, punkier, bands and all that. And we haven't had too many bands in this first couple issues. Even in the first arc, I don't think there's a ton. But the next arc, I don't know how much Steve wants to tease away, but there's going to be more opportunity, I think, to toss in some more bands and some more of that. And I love so much music that it's not just metal. So I like throwing in all the references and, all the eras and stuff like that, because there's plenty of, like you said, like especially the 90s stuff, because there's a lot of stuff I've been revisiting, like the Gits. Like I realized, like, I'm a huge fan of them, like, and that's because I remember that the Seattle grunge movie Hype.
Yeah.
People don't remember that movie anymore, and I'm like, and I think I was just watching clips of it on YouTube from some low quality VHS rip or something, and then the Second Skin came on from the Gits, and I'm like, oh yeah, this song fucking rips, like. And then I just went down a rabbit hole with them and, like, Guano Apes and stuff like that, so I like swimming in all the stuff and seeing what sticks and what I can, kind of bring forth. If that, again, I'm just rambling on and all that. But,
dude, as somebody who is just equally as comfortable listening to people like Jason Isbell as I am to going and listening to, like I said, like Dimmu Borgir and death metal. Yeah. And I think all of us on the show kind of fit in that mold. We all have kind of a preferred genre, but we all just love music. And I think that's, Parliament Funk is one of my favorite bands that I'll listen to, because I think that, Bootsy Collins is amazing and stuff. So we're right in there with you with that.
I once did a 24-hour comic book day where, if anyone's not familiar, it's where you, for some reason, you sit down with a bunch of people and you make a comic book in 24 hours. It's rarely good. It's rarely good unless you're Mike Norton or Ryan Brown, but, or Ryan Otley, but it's, Bootsy. I had a giant mecha Bootsy at one point. It was terrible, but
I had a D&D arc where my bard was Bootsy Collins. That was just my. He just walked around and funked up folks for a little bit.
You can't just not appreciate that guy at all. Especially, I started as a bass player myself, so
I love it.
Yeah. So.
I'm gonna toss it back over to you, Bill.
Okay, well, I was going to toss it over to our first interview.
Okay,
with Steve.
So. Well, I was just going to say, yeah, sorry. Steve had sent a link with some really great images, and I did want to, put them up here so that people can actually see. It makes great radio if you're listening on the audio, but we do have some of the images here. You can actually see these if you do go to the Kickstarter page. But one of the cool things here is you guys were talking about the different covers that are available on some of the different tiers and some of the different support things. And just looking at some of the alternative covers here, the variant covers that you're looking at, this one's really nice and gory. Love it. Lots of headless vampire rockers right there. This one I think just made me super giddy, just because it's beautiful, and also the fact that it's a great homage to is it House of Secrets or House of Mystery?
House of Secrets.
House of Secrets. I always get those two mixed up, and I don't know why.
They're both houses.
But it's just they're houses. They're next door technically. I guess they're next door to each other. Cain and Abel, run them. So, but just beautiful, just a beautiful image there, and then also black and white version of the original cover, and then I believe this is the metal version.
Yes, that will be the foil cover. Yeah,
which is beautiful, and I can imagine the foil is going to be super shiny, which is always nice. Like all the foil stuff is making a comeback, so gotta love it.
Well, this is the right book for it, I think. But I'd like to interject. I wasn't sure about doing a second metal cover because I had spoken with a lot of people on a Kickstarter group I'm in, and they were like, "No, I just do them for the first issue." So that's kind of what I was leaning towards. But thankfully, Don is much smarter than I am, and he penciled this and shared it with Patrick Brower, who he mentioned earlier from Challengers Comics, and Patrick inked it, and then Jason, who colors the interiors of the book, did this beautiful job on the colors. And yeah, every time this cover pops in up when we're talking to people, I have like my mea culpa moment where I'm like, nope, I was wrong. Don is brilliant. This cover kicks ass. And yeah, I'm excited to see it shiny.
Well, I think this is where my tendency to want to do too much interjects with Steve's, like, you know what, let's just do it. If it ain't broke, let's do it. And I think the cover formats we have are one of my favorite things about the campaign, because Steve and I, we kind of set what we're doing. I have the main cover, Steve has the main variant, and then Steve had the black and white in the first issue, I have the black and white in the second issue, third issue Steve will have the black and white, and I'll have it for the fourth, and so we can do the alternates. And then the retro covers, Steve's just like, I want to do this cover. I'm like, cool. That's one of my favorite things, is seeing, because I get to just pencil, and I don't get a lot of people who ink me. I don't get a chance to have other people ink me, and having Steve do that, and then also Steve do different things. Because with the first one, the Tomb of Dracula homage, what you were going, Steve, you're going for like a Tom Palmer kind of vibe. Yes. And Tom Palmer is one of my all-time favorite inkers. So I'm like, of course, I want to see what that would look like. And then this one, it's Bernie Wrightson. And so you're doing the dry brush and all that stuff.
And I couldn't pull off the stipple board or dry brush that he did. I wanted to, but yeah, I'm not going to unsell people on it. There's always
no one's going to fault anybody for not being able to copy Bernie.
Okay,
that's not exactly a mark against you, because I love how it turned out as well. So that's been the real fun thing. And the metal cover was just me assuming that we were doing another one. Steve never said we were doing the first one, so I'm like, what are we doing for the metal cover? And Steve's like, oh, I said, because I already laid it out, and he's like, I thought we were doing for the first one. I'm like, oh, I have this idea. And then we were going to be signing at Challengers, I think, in a week and a half after that. So I just texted Patrick. I'm like, hey, you want to ink this? And he's like, I haven't inked in years, but sure. And Patrick and Challengers are huge in my journey from getting back into comics, back into art, back in the drawing, and they've always been super supportive, and it just felt right to have him. And also, he's a fellow metalhead. We've collaborated on covers and music covers and other music before, so it just felt right to ask him to do that. And yeah, so I'm really happy with all the covers we have and how we're doing it. And it seems like, looking at the backing stats, it's pretty obvious people just like picking and choosing certain ones, and it's really cool to see. So,
well, a fun fact on the homage cover, speaking about Patrick, over the vampire's right shoulder, you can see a poster in the dressing room. Mm-hmm. And that is posterized from an issue of Hack Slash, where they introduced the band Acid Washed, which I believe featured performances from Patrick and Mike Norton. So and Crank, that's right. So yeah, that was my ham-fisted way to get them into the book.
Awesome. We've got John Runyon here. I'm so happy right now with these covers with a whole bunch of emojis. Awesome. Those kids these days and their emojis. But yeah, and so I mean, again, covers are amazing, but let's look at the interiors as well. I do have the selection of the interior. So this is the A cover.
Yeah, Steve and I had a decapitation vibe going for our covers without talking to each other. And
it's great minds, right? Great minds.
If no one can tell by now, I'm a big fan of puns. So I had to put one right on our front cover. But nice. Yeah.
And of course, in the interiors here, this picks up right where the first issue left off. In these sample pages, which again, these are available to look at on the Kickstarter website, so you can take a look at these. We're not spoiling too much, I hope, for those of you who are really excited to back this issue and to get a copy for yourself.
Look at that throat.
But
that's so well done.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that's gorgeous right there. Just wonderful and gory and just visceral. Love it. But
now that you mention it, I can see
cool.
the 30 Days of Nights, like the Steve Niles reference comes through like in a big way.
If I can just throw something that I really appreciate, I'm seeing in the color scheme, I'm seeing pinks and orange and yellows, and those aren't really colors you associate with horror. So
no,
it's nice to see something like that. Yeah.
Jason Millay, who colors the book, is a freaking madman. He's brilliant, and I'll say this in every interview, every chance I get, he elevates everything he works on. He colored my covers. He colored the metal cover. He's coloring down on the interiors, and he's just so fucking good.
It's I'll keep saying this to the cows come home. When Jason first started coloring the book, I had only my favorite reference was what he did on other people. And so I'm thinking, okay, it's gonna be really rendered and cool. Like, I'm all for it. Let's do it. And then he sends me the pages, and it's not that there's not any rendering on there, but it's all about the vibe. It's all about the mood, and he is just killing it every single time. And it's, I try not to think about how talented of an illustrator he is just to begin with, because he's an amazing illustrator.
He's insane.
And
he's really
him coupled with Steve. I'm like, and I'm drawing my pages, and I'm like, they're the ones that are gonna get to stare at it afterwards for hours, flatting it and coloring it. And I'm like, man, I hope they're having fun. But yeah, it's definitely. And actually, in this page, I did drop a note, a little hint, a little Easter egg. On the very last panel, there's an awning with a name.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys are very familiar with the artist Tyrell Cannon.
Yep.
He's a buddy of mine, the Chicago guy, fantastic artist. His new book, The Schlub, just came out, and I just messaged him. I'm like, I'm gonna put your name on this awning here, and in my head, this is a male strip club. So you're in this universe. There's a male strip club named Cannons, and it's gonna be. He's like, awesome. I'm like, all right.
I've got.
I mean, that is a good name for a strip club there for a male.
It really is. I've got an amazing Ultron that Tyrell did for me. That is,
he's phenomenal.
And dude, his so I've said this on the show before. I'm a total slut for Zipatone, right? And so for his commissions, he'll put Zipatone into that, and it just works. It's chef's kiss, man. It's so good.
Yeah, I that definitely. I've played with it a little bit here and there, and I really love it.
Yeah,
but I'm also like, commissions are the one thing where I'm like, I'm trying to change my thinking about it, because I spoke to a lot of people at C2E2, fellow artists, and when I was getting back into art and doing commissions and all that, a lot of commissions people liked and loved were like the heroic pose, or like the two people kind of locked in battle. And now it's like, I think Daniel Warren Johnson just kind of ruined it for everybody. By saying like, no, you can do a whole like scene, make the vibe, and people will absolutely love it. And I'm seeing that more and more with commissions. Not that they're all not awesome images and really well done poses and stuff like that, but it's the overall. So you can have Spider-Man this big on a giant paper, but if everything else around it is making you feel Spider-Man, there you go. So that's something I'm really looking forward to tackling with these next rounds of commissions I'll be doing for the Kickstarter. Just kind of, if the time comes, depending on what people ask for. But and trying to toss some Zipatone in there, because I have some pages left to use, and I got the little proper way to put it down and all that. I'm just got to, not be scared to do it.
The thing about DWJ is he'll just give you a shot of the Death Star, and he'll be like, "Look at this really great Darth Vader commission I just did." It's just the
like,
Death Star.
Where is he? I mean, it looks great, but where is he?
Right,
it's beautiful, right?
Window.
He's riding on top of the TIE fighter. Oh, I see.
Yeah, it cracks me up. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
but dude, I love it. Yeah.
And Tyrell was one of those people who started doing that, and I feel like that
Mhm.
actually took his art to another level. There's a
100%.
real specific Batman Beyond commission he did that I brought up to him a few times, like where it was like one of those scene commissions, and I'm like, that's where I saw you go from like Tyrell's good to like, fuck, Tyrell's good. Like, yeah, and he's just been taken off from there. So yeah, but yeah, I try not to drop too many references or name things and stuff there, but I can't help myself sometimes just because I love doing that stuff and I love making this book. So it's just all.
Well, but that's the texture of comics that we know and love, right? Like I love opening up just a Spider-Man book and seeing like Ditko Avenue or something in the background, right? Like that's awesome, right? That's what you want. And so I like that because it's a nod to the people who know, and comics don't have to be for people who are just steeped in comics culture, right? They're for anybody should be able to grab a comic and pick it up. But for those of us who have read it for years and who look at it academically, or it's such a large portion of our lives, like I want to see a nod to Howard Cruz in a queer comic, right?
Mhm.
Like I appreciate that and enjoy that. So I knowing Tyrell just by the wayside is that's funny.
Yeah, it's I feel like if you're not doing that, like, are you like, why aren't you
fun with it?
You know?
Yeah, you got to have fun with it. Like that shows me that the artist is enjoying what they're doing. They are having a blast with it.
And you guys haven't seen these pages yet, but there's definitely more in this issue, especially to our bud Mike Norton and his book Rock Gods of Jackson, Tennessee, which is phenomenal.
Excellent.
It's a phenomenal music book. It's like one of the best coming of age 80s movies you've never seen, plus mutant wild boars at the end. Like this is nuts. It's great. But yeah, there's plenty of nods to that. And then I've also enjoyed putting my friends who are musicians as names of instruments. Like, instead of Marshall amps, I have Dewey amps for Benjamin Dewey. Instead of well, there is a brand company called Crank, but it's with a K, and I made it with a C for Chris Crank, the letterer, and collaborated with Mike Norton on the Crankcast, a podcast I've been listening to for over a decade now for some reason. And my buddy John O'Deener, who's a fantastic drummer, co-owner of Rootless Coffee, and also a writer, and I made the drummer plays John O drums. So it's I'll be dropping in Bryant basses or something in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Okay,
we actually do have someone else jumping in. David Hazan, say hello. Hi, David.
He's the koala of comics. He's from Australia.
Drop bear of comics.
Okay, so I know we're fighting the clock now. I can't believe it's already been an hour here. So why don't Steve and Don, if you can, just give us some specifics about this particular Kickstarter, what some of the particular stretch goals are, how long this goes, all that information.
I'll let Steve go. Talk too much.
Okay, yeah. We wrap up. Today's Thursday, so we wrap up 2 weeks from yesterday at 1 p.m. Central, I think, or maybe it's 2 p.m. Central, so 3 p.m. Eastern for you Eastern folks. And yeah, we've unlocked, or staked as we call it, our first two stretch goals, the postcards and the digital comics bundle. So we've got a postcard of Don's first cover, issue 2 cover. And then the next stretch goal is my cover. The one after that is the song, right?
Yeah.
And then the rest we're floating around, like it'll either be a sticker or another postcard or a digital comics bundle. And we try to goose it every $1,000 that we get. We want to add something else to the mix. And then we're already talking about issue 3, and it's going to be a 4-issue arc. So we've got two more parts after this one. See, I've gone just completely in wandering, rambling mode. Did I cover it, or is there more I need to say?
Well, no, yeah. We end on the 13th. My birthday is Sunday the 3rd, so I don't know if someone wants to throw some extra backing support on my birthday, I would accept it as a gift.
We have to time this on both of our birthdays over the campaign.
Yeah.
Well,
This is a Virgo country book. We're also, we're headed towards the stretch goals. I'm just so just glad with where we are right now with the campaign. The first one exceeded our expectations twofold, threefold even. We were just hoping to get funded, to be like well over 200% funded was just insane to us. And we know the second issue it's a harder road to climb from this, after the first issue, because people have read the book. Maybe they're going to wait see if we have a trade. Maybe they're going to switch to a digital. Maybe they did the big buy-in in the first one with the box set, and now they're just buying the single issue. So it's all good. We're just so happy to be past that funding mark comfortably, that we can get the book out to people, and we can start talking about the third book and the fourth book and planning the second arc and doing all these things, because that's what we love doing. We love making the book. And so super excited about that. There are some tiers that are available still that are very limited. We still have some commission slots open. For Steve and I, we have original art open. The original art for the metal cover is up, and the original art for page 5 is the only original interior art, the only traditionally inked original art for the book, aside from the metal cover, that's available right now. And I might just do one page from each issue, pick a good page to do, and just do it traditionally, and all that. So those are still available if people are interested in that. And yeah, I mean, of course, then there's all the covers you can pick and choose from, or just sharing the campaign. We're thankful for any and all support we get on that.
Yeah. Okay. Box set wise too, we're still doing the Blizzard of Evie box cover, which is the riff on the Ozzy Osbourne Blizzard of Oz. But in that box, you get all the issue 1 covers, including the metal cover, plus the Blizzard of Evie variant, which is only in there, and a sketch cover, original art by either Don or me. And then you get all 5 of the issue 2 variants, including the issue 2 metal cover and a couple of guitar picks. So it's like 12 covers in the book. And in all honesty, the box is really, really fucking full. So it's kind of cool, but I'm like, holy crap, I don't know. Do we need a bigger box, going forward? But it's just it's so much fun to do these things, because Don and I, when we're talking about stretch goals or box stuff, it always revolves around what would I like if I were going to back this. And it's a lot of fun to just kind of have these nerdy moments of guitar picks, or when do we want to do a backstage pass type of stretch goal or box set reward. And I'm just so glad that the book resonates with people, because it allows us to indulge in just a bunch of fun stuff, and we get to be giggling children as we put some of this together. And I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
now
it's like, even with the guitar picks, Steve was like, well, you're the one who plays, like, what kind of guitar picks? I'm like, no, you can't. I'm gonna pick like the what I'm using, and what I use as a guitar pick for the most part is like these really little, these thick, like fancy ones.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this would not be cost efficient to use. So just pick something, because I'm gonna be way too nerdy about it and all that. But maybe as it goes on, I joked that with John Westhoff, because he had a drumstick thing with his, I said, you know what, I think for the collected edition, I'll get like a pack of picks and I'll play with them, and we'll put those as a tier, like a Don played pick for whoever would probably not want that.
I thought you were putting that on your OnlyFans page.
There you go.
Number one, I was gonna jokingly say, just be careful, because Westhoff is listening and he will add this to his next Kickstarter.
I hope so. John better add John, whatever you want to call him, Westhoff drumsticks.
John. It's been pre-John.
If anything, just to make him play drums more, because I made him play drums last October to contribute to my Rifftober series. So we collaborated. I just had him like play some drums. I'll write a riff to it. We did. He actually used it on his last campaign or whatever. That's the little thing I put together. But yeah, whatever makes John do more things, John.
Support Drumsticks of Doom when he does another Kickstarter because
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm also happy to create more work for other people. So
oh yeah,
demand that.
Absolutely.
Demand John used drumsticks.
I've placed the the Kickstarter link in where we're streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitch. So if you are joining us from any of those, you can actually just go ahead and click on that link, and it'll take you right to the Kickstarter page. So you can take a look for yourselves and check out which tier you'd like to support, or share with friends that might be really into reading The Adventures of Evie and the Helsings. But yeah.
In the spirit of a pre-birthday present, I went ahead and just locked in while we were on the show, locked into that metal cover. So
Nice.
yeah.
Well, thank you.
And naturally, when we do put out the audio episode, which will be well before the 13th, we'll make sure that we have those links in with communication as well. All right, Steve, thank you so much for joining us again. Don, thank you for joining us for the first time. Really appreciate it and wish you all the best of luck with this campaign. And I'm sure everything's going to go swimmingly. So
Appreciate it. Had a blast, guys. I can't wait to do it again. And thanks for the support.
Absolutely. All right. Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, guys.
Oh, Bill?
Yeah.
Sometime we do need to discuss the whole Jordan Love, Justin Fields thing. I'm just saying.
Okay. Yeah.
I froze him.
Yeah. It's like I'm actually having a harder time. Like, it's actually going to be the harder thing for me is to be watching the Packers without Mason Crosby over Rodgers right now. And I'm prepared for a missing year. It's like almost going to be like Bobby in the shower. So,
well,
Bobby in the shower, really?
I thought you guys were done so many other times before this to go back to the slasher movie Rising from the Grave. I don't predict anything. I don't trash talk anything. I'm still terrified of you guys. That's I have PTSD, Packer traumatic stress disorder. So anyway, I didn't mean to go off on the tangent, but I
not a problem at all. But when you have a Bears fan and a Packers fan, things have to be said. So yeah,
I'm going to stay very silent right now.
Yeah, he's a Cowboys fan, for God's sake. We all hate you.
One of my students. It happens to everyone sometimes.
Yeah, that's the
poor dears.
My franchise makes a lot of money. I don't just tell you.
All right.
All right,
guys. Thanks again.
Take care, guys.
Take care.
Bye, y'all.
Take care. Have a great one. Thanks.
Yeah.
I got it in.
Always fun to have Steve on, and it was great to meet Don and have him on for the first time. So that's awesome. Maybe we can get them back for issue number 3, which I'm sure this one already, like we had said, this one has been funded. It's on its second stretch goal. It's almost to the third stretch goal. So
if they come on again, I think we really have to music it up though, and like
it's gonna be an all music episode.
Maybe do some quiz questions and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, I would love that. But I love that what we all just like the ground we just covered. Right, we talked about music, we talked about horror movies, we talked about comics, we talked about football, albeit briefly. That's a lot of cool stuff to cover, right? Yeah. Like I love it. And when I talk about this show, that's what I say. I can't say it's necessarily a comics show. Like it's called Comic Book Bears, but we really are a pop culture podcast. And I love that.
Yeah.
David sitting here. Don't pretend like he's a Bears fan too.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Clever.
It's funny though. The one point, my friends Nick Barbarisi and Tommy Johns were talking about starting a face, because we know there's a lot of gay guys that are into football.
Oh, absolutely.
And we were talking about doing a Packers Bears group, but you can't call it a Packers Bears group. So, so whether it was like Cheesehead Ursine thing or something, so
Ursine Cheeseheads.
We never got far with it, but you really have to be kind of clever.
Tongue in cheek.
Yeah. Because you just can't do it. What the obvious thing would be. So
no.
I'm just like not ready for football. I've watched two preseason games and like kind of just like checked in with the Jets Giants scores as things were going. I'm just not ready for it this year.
I don't ever watch preseason stuff. I really don't, like, because to me, like, preseason's great and all, but preseason really does not have any precursor on how the season's going to go. I mean,
it's true, but sometimes, let's face it, that was your only time to watch Manziel and Michael Sams.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So there are some preseason. Not all preseasons are created equal. Let's put it
right. No, that's fair. Yeah.
There's sometimes it just burn off, and then sometimes, and just like that industry with football Bears. Yeah, maybe.
No, let's call it. Look, if we're doing a gay football thing, we can always just float hut in the butt. Like,
yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Everybody's a tight end tonight. There we go.
All right. Well, since we're in the mood to spread out our joy outside of comic books, I guess we're going to be movie bears for the next couple of minutes. So we did want to talk about and there's really movie bears, and go support them. But we wanted to talk about, as is our kind of thing, when a comic book property is turned into a film, we talk about it. And the one that we're going to be talking about now is Blue Beetle. And that's the 14th installment in the DC Extended Universe. Film was directed by Ángel Manuel Soto, and it stars Xolo Maridueña. And I have to say, I've not watched one frame of Cobra Kai, and I really want to now. And other people in the cast, including Susan Sarandon and George Lopez. And we're going to turn it over to Steve because he's so damn good at summarizing what the films are about. So why don't you take it there, and then we'll talk about what we thought of Blue Beetle.
All right. Well, Bill, like you said, Movie Bears podcast, go check them out. They actually also have their opinions up in their second to last episode, I believe, about the Blue Beetle. So just a quick summary of this. Jaime Reyes is just
pinged me earlier. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
One big family.
Yeah.
One big family.
It is family.
And that's what this film is about, so go ahead.
It is. It's all about family. But actually, interestingly enough, this is all about like mostly biological family, which is very much unlike a lot of the Fast and Furious movies. This is very much about two families, this movie. So you have Jaime Reyes returns home to Palmera City just after graduating college. And now, of course, he's got to deal with pretty much a financial disaster that his family is mired in. So he's trying to get a job. And through a chance encounter, he actually runs into Jenny Cord, who is the daughter of famed industrialist who is also missing, Ted Cord. And in doing so, he becomes he comes into the possession of the Scarab, who then turns around and possesses him, providing him with untold galactic cosmic style possibly powers that he's going to actually have to use to not only protect his family, but also the legacy of the Cord Industries. The original Blue Beetle, and then finally protect the world itself from the evil industrialist Victoria Cord and her plans to use the Scarab's abilities or code to create an army of Omax. So I have to say, I really enjoyed this movie a lot. It's very much I would say very much a family film. So it's really geared towards sort of people being able to watch it together with their families. there's a lot of, goofy pratfall type humor. There's some, some other kind of humor that is more, I think, more on the immature side, but then also there's a really, great dynamic that exists with Jaime and his family, with everybody who's playing a role, from the parents to his sister, and even George Lopez, who I think is actually in there for sort of like the parents or possibly the grandparents. He has a very distinct kind of humor that kind of comes from the 90s, early 2000s. But I think they all work well together, and I really love the the dynamic that they present. And then of course you've got the other family that exists, the Cord family. You've got Ted, who's missing and is not there at all, except in an audio recording, sort of in the middle and towards the end. And his daughter, who's come back to try and stop her evil aunt, played by Susan Sarandon, from doing this horrible stuff. So really, really great. And even the villain in this too, there's a family connection, in his history and his backstory that it's pretty, I would say, actually pretty impressively moving. I was very, not expecting that.
Mhm.
Now, I do want to say we are going to be talking about spoilers, so kind of all over the place on the table here. So if you haven't seen this film, I apologize. We're going to be talking about some spoilers, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think I really enjoyed it. It's not a perfect movie. There's some stuff that maybe pacing wise probably could have changed up a little bit. Maybe some other choices here and there. It's also a lot of boners randomly, which is fine. He's 22. I'm sure they've got to have his boners pointed out every time they happen. But I thought this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the AI in his suit. I also enjoyed a cameo by Harvey Guillen, who plays Dr. Sanchez, and yet another character whose name is completely like either mispronounced or forgotten or like misused by all the other main characters. This is the second time, second character he's played. Susan Sarandon always calls him something different, Carlos or whatever, and he's like, "That's not my name."
Santos.
Santos. That's what it is. Santos is like, "I'm not Dr. Santos. I'm Dr. It's very similar to his character Guillermo, aka Gizmo, on What We Do in the Shadows. But always fun to see him and stuff. I love him. He's cute. He's wonderful. So, and he gets a few good moments in this.
Now, Caleb, you had said something interesting in our chats where you said something along the lines you didn't think it was a great film, but it was a great time out at the theater.
Yeah, so I'm probably going to be, after talking with you guys, I'm probably going to be the lower end of the spectrum in my enjoyment of this. I didn't dislike it, right? I want to, I did not hate this movie. I didn't dislike it. It was a fun night out at the movies. I thought it was fine. Overall, I'm probably never going to watch this again. I don't need to. We're going to say lots of good things about it, but I do want to just throw some things out there too. Some of the things that I didn't enjoy about it. It felt like they took a lot of the formula from the Iron Man 1 movie. There was a lot of similar moments to that, but they gave it the Iron Man 2 treatment, right? That's what I felt like I was watching. It also felt a lot like they wanted to shoehorn in a lot of Paul Rudd style charm, and they just didn't have the Paul Rudd style delivery to me. It just didn't work out. George Lopez is
humor. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, George Lopez is saltpeter to me. Like in anything George Lopez does, I've listened to some of his comedy, his stand-up's cool, but like shows and stuff, it's just not for me. And that's great. It doesn't have to be, right? There were some really great nods. I thought there were some really, really cool moments of again comic book Easter eggs, continuity stuff like that. But it didn't land for me. Because the internet's going to do its thing, I'd made that comment on the internet, and of course, rando stranger, "Oh, you're a racist and you hate Latinos," and I was like, no, like the actual Latin culture stuff was the part of it I actually enjoyed the most. It was the plot that was the problem. But again, I did think it was a fun night at the movies. I thought there were some great action scenes. I think the CGI actually looked really, really cool, and that's hard to do.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
I like this. I liked Jaime Reyes. Like, I think that character is great. There were a few nods to the Ditko character that that I quite enjoyed. I would love to hear what Zach Crusade would think about this. even though it's not the Ditko character at all, there were nods to it, right? And inherently there is a conversation being had not only about Latino or Latinx culture, but about social hierarchies and the monetary culture that we live in, and capitalism that plays into it, which were Ditko themes. Those were things that he did explore and stuff. So again, did not hate the movie whatsoever. There was just a lot of moments that didn't land for me, and the comedy did not stick for me at all. But Abuela was awesome. Like I loved Abuela a lot, right? So I think
when she took her braids out, I was like, yeah.
You should take a look at what that actress looked like when she was 27.
Oh
my God,
she a bombshell.
Exact words.
Yeah, I've seen those pictures. I know exactly what you're talking about. She's bombshell. Yeah,
and she's also one of Mexico's leading acting teachers as well.
Oh, so, okay, that makes sense. I mean, she's been in the industry forever. Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I land on it. I thought it was fine.
Yeah. My feeling is, and I come very much on the positive end of this, but it does have the problem that it does have problems that almost every comic book film has. One, it's too long. Yeah. There's no reason this couldn't have been under 2 hours at all. With the terrain that they were set. George Lopez, you use him wisely. It's great. Here they used him too much. If you had half of him, you'd be saying, "Oh my God, this is one of the best, one of the best scene stealers ever." But his continued presence, I think, dragged stuff down a little bit. I loved how organically the family dynamic was presented. I thought the one thing that was frustrating about the Latin culture, and I would be fascinated to find out what exactly was cut from the film, where you at the end where you had the neighbors all helping out. You never saw a neighbor before that,
that did feel a little weird because
and I almost feel like that was something that was a hole and may have been in the plan. It may have been part of the plan, and we just didn't see it because other stuff had to be cut out. Like I said, I haven't seen one frame of Cobra Kai, but the Xolo Maridueña, I mean, he's a leading man. He is an absolutely a leading man in the making. I loved the sort of like, I took meta delight in Susan Sarandon being a capitalist. I just thought that was a clever and fun move. And the only thing I have to say when you hit on this, Steve, is like the Cord family story is fascinating. And that, like, I almost wish the story had started with Ted. I almost wish we had that because the backstory was so detailed and so intricate and so emotional in some parts that I wish they didn't just. I wish there was a mechanism where we saw it and weren't just told about it.
I mean, there was a lot of like that kind of let's just talk about why and do all this rather than actually seeing it in action. So.
And I love that they actually pulled a lot of Ditko elements in that. In the original Ditko film, the Pago Island is huge. Ted has an uncle who's effectively kind of operating in the way that Victoria is. So there's a lot of Ditko elements. And they even have salutes to the original Blue Beetle from 39 in there. So I loved how it honored everything. The best thing about the film, though, it is such a treat to see a comic book movie where what is at stake is not the fate of the world.
Yes,
it's a much.
I mean, not technically either.
And
absolutely
it's
give you that one.
So nice to see that.
And this could have easily done that because with the lore of the actual scarab itself being part of
fallen through that hole, and we've just seen it too many times, and that the stakes certainly were a high stakes situation. There would be a tomorrow, even if they didn't prevail. and that's nice to see. And I think it, and just the whole story of the film of originally being set as an HBO Max streaming film that that they had confidence that it did have theatrical possibilities. I just it's a scrappy film. It's an underdog film, and I wish the box office was a little more robust naturally, but it still took #1 the week it came out, and though Caleb won't be one of the repeat viewers, I think for a certain type of person, this is going to be Ghostbusters level rewatching, because these are characters you don't normally see in this particular light. And also again with the CGI, I mean, we're coming after films like Quantumania and The Flash, and we're just too much. And this, on the most limited budget, I thought was much more impressive than either of those films.
I agree, and I think because they were they were pretty calculating about when they used it. One thing I did listen to the Movie Bears, and they said like, "What about those fucking flamingos at the very beginning of the movie? Like, why do they have those CGI flamingos?" I didn't even notice that. Like, that was gone out of my head.
Yeah,
but,
I really wasn't looking at the fucking flamingos.
We noticed them.
But the very specific way.
Roger and I both called out the flamingos. I didn't realize they were CGI'd, right? when I saw, and I thought they were a great nod because look, so I go out in the van, right? I do Southwest Little Rock. One part of Southwest Little Rock is heavily Latino, right? Like that's kind of where it's a Latino neighborhood. There are plastic flamingos everywhere, right? It's a thing. It is and so I saw that. I'm like, dude, you can go down Baseline, right? You go down there and like there, you're gonna see that Geyer Springs area here in Little Rock. Like that's there. I thought that was a really cool thing, right? And the fact that they were actual flamingos, I just thought that was neat. But I also thought it drove home the point that again, you don't really know where they're at, right? Like they say where they're at, but
it's Palmyra City. It's kind of like
that was I think a big frustration for someone who was a fan of the comic series. And I followed Jaime from the beginning, which wasn't hard because I'm old. But in the book, both the John Rogers written and in the reboot, El Paso, where it's set, is a character in and of itself.
Right.
That we lost that I think was a bit of a frustration. But I also understand that with the DC Universe films, they want this, and there's connections to Gotham City in here too, because that's where
you went to Gotham U.
Yeah,
you went to Gotham University.
So I understand why they did that. But I do think something, and that probably was the right decision. But I do think that if you have read Blue Beetle comics and just how border culture is so integral to Jaime's background, and also I also really like that Jaime wasn't a teenager in this.
Yeah, no, he's
because
there's more agency
maturity there that I think would have held the film back.
Well, he's old enough to understand financial struggle, right? But bouncing back, what I did appreciate, because they don't call this El Paso, right? It does have a different name. I thought that was kind of in line with what DC Universe does across the board. We know, like we can think about the Gotham City. It's an analog for New York City, or Metropolis also might be an analog for New York City, right?
That's not where they are.
No, I realize that, but Coast City, like Central City, right? These aren't real places, but they're analogs in the real world. So I like that we get this kind of fictionalized city that could be anywhere on the coast, right? It could be.
I pictured it. I pictured it as Gulf Coast, like somewhere between Miami and like Houston. So it's like it could be anywhere in the Gulf Coast, like if Miami moved over, like that kind of thing. But it's also it's very interesting because of the contrast, and I think they did it on purpose, where it's not necessarily a border, like you're so close, you're on the border with Mexico, and that's why there's so much cultural cohesion there. But it's also, this is more poverty versus excess and progress, because you have this beautiful city that's super high tech, that's visible from from an old neighborhood that they're talking about, like, oh yeah,
which to me felt more like Miami than anything else.
Yeah, but
it felt very Miami-like.
Yeah,
they allude to the family being undocumented though in the very very early on in the film, which I thought was a great nod. Like that, like they make the comments like, "Hey, if they show up, they're going to want to see papers," and everybody's like, "Oh, I'm out!" Right? Like so they have that moment, which I thought was because that is that can be kind of universal for folks. Whether you're from Central America, whether you're from Mexico, whether you're Cubano, whether you're from any of these, any of the islands. How did you get here? Where's your family from? Like that's a thing, right? No, it doesn't matter if you're in Southern California or Miami or Texas or Louisiana or Chicago or any of the cities that folks can be at. Like that's a fear, right? And I thought that was great. So we have a kind of fictionalized, could be anywhere city that deals with this. That is almost a universal experience for immigrants who come from Latin culture, from South America, from Central America, from Mexico. I thought that was great because it doesn't nail it down. We're not talking about any singular immigrant experience. That was one of the better moments of the film for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, the class, class is such a major aspect of this as well, where you have Susan Sarandon, evil industrialist Susan Sarandon, the uber capitalist, and everybody else who's basically struggling to make ends meet, and as a family. And this is why I think having him be an adult, he's at a point where he actually has the ability to go out and get a job. Whether he can get and hold a job, that's the difficult part, being who he is and his background and all of that. But that's I thought was really interesting.
There's also the added bonus of me feeling no guilt because they showed him as an adult for wanting to throw him around a bedroom.
Well, there's that too, and the fact that they were constantly talking about. I mean, I say constantly. There's only there's a lot of instances where they talk about him having a hard on.
100%.
Like, they're pretty open about this. I mean, other than that, this is a very family friendly film, except for those moments when you're like, all right, so parents are going to have to explain that, like, when he has to adjust his crotch, very obviously, and he gets interrupted.
And when you were 22, wasn't that like at least
it was a constant thing?
40 minutes of your day.
22, hell, that's my life now.
But no, I thought this was a lot of fun, and also this is one of those things. If you do decide to watch it multiple times or get it on home video, there's a lot of detail, a lot of Easter eggy, but let's just say comic detail that's in here that's fun to see. I don't know if anybody noticed this, but the Ted Kord Blue Beetle outfits that were there, obviously one was missing, but did you notice he had a pillow belted to the dummy, probably because he had a little bit of middle-aged spread, and so his figure was a little bit bigger than would be for that mannequin.
That's also in one of the his weight gain is in one of the Justice League International arcs.
There you go. Yeah. Exactly. But just a lot of fun stuff. That's in the backgrounds, little things that pop up here and there. Yeah. Big Belly Burger, of course, makes its appearance, as in it does in every DC property where they have fast food. But I thought this was good. I thought this was a great version of Jaime Reyes. It felt very much to me like the kind of immature but willing to learn and grow Jaime from Young Justice that I really enjoyed. If you're talking about other media products besides the comics, where he's still very firmly a teenager. But yeah.
And just as a final thought for me, I don't think my lukewarm reaction to the show should deter anybody from going and seeing it. I don't typically enjoy cheesy 80s style action movies. Just in general, like that's not my cup of tea. I don't seek those out, and I'm not a fan of comedy just in general, right? Like I can't stand shows like The Office. I hate Rick and Morty, so I just don't watch that.
You hate fun.
Yes, no, I want
you hate fun.
That's fun doesn't exist in my world at all. Like let's go talk about the capitalist immigrant experience and how it's fucking over the planet. Let's deal with that.
Wow. All right, well, that's Blue Beetle. Okay.
Awesome.
All right, so let's go over to comic books, and I think we probably should start with Caleb's book. because it's the biggest team book that we
Okay.
have. Though I have a team
Yeah.
book as well. So why don't we start there?
I
And I
sure will.
actually read the first 2 issues, so I can chime in here.
Perfect. So
And I can't.
I will stick to the first 2 issues then. I
No, please
caught
go
up,
to 3.
though.
Please go beyond 3. Please.
Okay.
I
Well,
want to hear
just
from Tim.
I'll do it, but I'll be real brief, right? I'm going to kind of give this overview. I read the
No,
first 4
I
issues.
especially want to hear about it because of the structures of 1 and 2, and we can get into this.
Okay. So I read issues 1 and 4 of the newest Avengers book, right? This is written by Jed MacKay, drawn by C.F. Villa with Federico Blee on the covers. And this is jumping us back into the Avengers world in a trying to think about how to say this nicely. I did not enjoy the most recent run of the Avengers before this, right?
Caleb,
Like I was
Caleb. No one enjoyed the most recent run of the event.
No, fair enough. I just it was the opposite of things that are good, right? So I just it was bad. I couldn't, and I'm an Avengers mark, right, man? So I just can't. I don't know what was wrong with it. This is trying to kind of rewrite the ship, so to speak. So the first issue is we are getting the team back together. That's really all it is, and interestingly enough, they're not even going to dive right into the main issue. They're going to hint at it to get us there. So this current team and really the entirety of issue 1 puts together our newest lineup. And the new lineup has got some very familiar faces, right? So we're going to see Captain Marvel. Carol is leading the team. She is now the chairman of the Avengers. We get Captain America, but Sam Wilson, right? So Scarlet Witch is on the team. The Vision, Thor, Iron Man, and Black Panther, right? So some fairly core people, most of who we saw in the last arc, Jason Aaron's run, but some real heavy hitters, right? And the getting the team back together portion of it comes from the fact that a well-known villain in it, Terminus, is attacking something, right? He's blowing up cities. He's just going ham. And what he's trying to get his hands on is basically a black hole generator that Project Pegasus has put together. Why? We're not real sure, right? He knows. Obviously, Terminus has a good idea of why he's doing it, but the Avengers are having to figure that out. And it kind of culminates and comes together in the sense that Terminus is like, no, I've got to have this. I've got to grow. You don't know what's coming. Bad things are about to happen. So Terminus is in this weird self-preservation mode, and that's why he's attacking. And that's the impetus of getting the team back together. And there's some really cool moments for each character. They recap the issue between Carol and Tony and their drama that spun out of Civil War II. They give a nod to the fact that Captain America and Captain America are both kind of the same. They're still friends and they both exist in the world, and so they show a nod to that. They kind of loop you in and wrap you into T'Challa's world now that T'Challa is exiled from Wakanda, which Namor's not. That's a fun twist. But he is off on his own, and he's not technically the Black Panther anymore. So there's a really great moment where she's talking to Sam about why he needs to be on the team. It's because they keep the team grounded. You just get a good kind of profile of who these characters are and how they're going to fit. Of course, we see Wanda, who is just the agent of chaos and just a powerhouse. Vision, concerned about his humanity, and is he a person or is he just a machine? You see a lot of that. But all of this culminates in them having to take down Terminus to get rid of this machine that's going to make a black hole. And in order to do that, Carol has to get it, and she is trying to fly it away, right? She's trying to get it off the planet so it doesn't suck in the Appalachia into nothing. And it explodes. And when it does, it takes Carol somewhere, right? Or nowhere. Maybe that's a better word. To nowhere and no when. And when they're in no when and nowhere, there's one person there who's waiting to talk to her. And he's hurt. He's wounded. He's dying. And that character is, of course, to remind us of what's going on in the filmatic universe, is Kang the Conqueror. And he has somehow orchestrated a lot of this because he wanted to warn, or maybe it just kind of happened that way, to warn of what's coming. And what's coming is, it ties into what Bill found enjoyable about the Blue Beetle film, the fact that in Blue Beetle it wasn't a world-ending threat. It's one of the knocks I have of this book, even though I really do enjoy it. is it's the opposite of that. This is another world-ending threat, right? We're seeing the Avengers again having this major universe-threatening, everything rides on this. The sun will not rise tomorrow if this goes the wrong way, kind of villain moment that Kang is warning them about, because Kang doesn't want the universe to end because it ends him. So somehow Kang is like pseudo good in this. In the second issue, Carol brings Kang back out, and they're having to deal with kind of dealing with the fact that Kang is now out of this nowhere and no when, and they're stopping terrorist attacks across the board, because what he's done is he's like, hey, you have no reason to trust me, right? But I'll help you save 1,000 lives, or maybe 100,000. I forget what it was. We'll do it right now. Like I've been there. I know what's about to happen. Hydra's going to blow up 50 people or murder 50 people over here. There's going to be a train wreck over there. So he coordinates the Avengers and he sends them out to save all these lives as an act of good faith. And it works, right? Like they're like, okay, you seem to know what you're talking about. Let's get into why you're helping us. And at the end of issue 2, we kind of see this major threat for the arc, and that is the Impossible City, right? So that's where we are left with, and we don't, Bill, you don't really know what the Impossible City is,
I don't.
right?
No. But
so
if I can just say a few things about 1 and 2.
I was gonna ask you to. I was gonna say this. I want to hear what you thought about the first 2 issues,
because one thing that I think has been a problem with even with great Avengers runs like Hickman, and I love the first Bendis series. I absolutely love the first New Avengers. They're not done in ones. They're far from it. It's decompression with a capital D, and it's underlined and it's italicized, and there's an exclamation point at the end of it. What we have here is, though it's still part of a continuing story, I imagine if I read 2 without reading 1, I still would have had a very complete reading experience. And we haven't had that in Avengers in literally decades. Not that these are done in one stories, but they are focused stories. And that's one thing I really enjoyed seeing about it. I love that the team comes out of the gate and it's all heavy hitters.
Yep.
That doesn't always happen with Avengers. Sometimes it's you have team members throughout a trial run, and sometimes they equate themselves fairly well, like Firestar or whatever,
or Justice.
Or Justice. Yeah, I mean those are ones that, or even just characters who are unproven for being on a team like Wolverine or that kind of team, or Spider-Woman. But they don't even get into the Skrull Queen. It was things that it felt very non-modern Avengery to me.
Kind of villain of the week a little
Avengers, bit, and I especially like with T'Challa that how they play him as competitive.
Yeah.
I think that would have to be an element if this character was a real life person.
Oh, 100%.
But you also have wonderful human moments in the show. I mean, because Carol in recruiting all of the members, she's kind of playing all of them, but she's not. But it's not. It's not like in that Batman Machiavellian way. She just knows that this group of people will be the best team for her to lead.
She's playing into the she's not duping them, right? She's playing into the better elements of their natures.
Yeah.
Though.
And I love that line where she had if this was a Ms. Marvel thing, Jess and Rhodey and Jen, they would be here. But that's a Ms. Marvel thing, not an Avengers thing. I love that line. It goes by really quick. But there's wonderful human moments. Issue 2 had a wonderful human moment with Captain America and the truck driver who was very tired. And it's revealed from Kang's peace offering that truck driver was going to run into a bus and kill 43 people. Mm-hmm. And just on the basis that he's a trucker in the United States of America, and that guy's tired.
Yep.
And
he was taking pills to stay awake. He's not a bad person. He's just trying to get through, right?
but good people
True.
have bad circumstances sometimes.
Yep.
And I just love those moments. And issue 1 impressed me, but not enough to stick with it. Issue 2 makes me wish I had pre-ordered 3 and 4.
Okay.
And I'm probably going to rectify that with a trip to the comic store soon. So I really want to hear about 3 and 4.
Okay. So yeah, I'm going to get you there. I want to talk about what you just said though. So there are some of those things that I truly did appreciate. I like that we have this kind of villain of the week thing. In issue 1, it was Terminus, and we dealt with it. And there is this overarching thing. Here's a reason to read issue 2, right? Second one is Kang sends him on missions to do that. Also thought that was cool. Issue 3, we do get into some more of the big overarching thing, right? That's when they really break into what is the in the Impossible City. But as you mentioned, these are just all heavy hitters. I've said this before. The book that made me fall in love with superhero comics is Perez and Busiek's Avengers Volume 3, and you did have characters like Justice and Firestar. You had Silverclaw. You had some more human moments, and then you get into like the Luke Cage and those street level villains or street level heroes. I like that in my Avengers because for exactly the reasons that Carol wants Sam in there. It grounds those characters. And for a young reader, and I realize that comics are not made for young readers though, but I think having those junior leaguers, I'm using air quotes for those of you at home who are listening, having those junior members or those people who are trying to come up and find their place, that gives younger readers a spot like, okay, I'm not an MLB player. I play on my little league team, but this is like the little leaguers getting to go out with the Yankees, right? Like that's kind of a cool concept. And I do like that. And that is missing for me here, but it's also the Avengers, right? So do you really want somebody who's untested being there? Are we going to get there? Maybe. Right now we've just got our core team. But in the 3rd issue, we really get to see the Impossible City. And the Impossible City is sentient in and of itself, which is cool, but it is carrying a team of bad guys. Like this force is the layer of the Ashen Combine, right? And the Ashen Combine is made up of idle alabaster, and that's this big, very kind of Metatron looking thing that feeds off of worship. We get the City Smith, which is somebody who comes in and he is kind of for those of you who played Vampire the Masquerade, he's kind of a flesh crafter, but for cities, like he just turns them into a thing. We get Lord Ennui, who is a connoisseur. I don't really know what that means, but he doesn't like to be bothered. He doesn't really do anything. He just wants silence, right? He wants to take the fine things and just eliminate everybody. And then we get the Dead. And the Dead he's kind of a necromancer, and we don't see a lot. He's just a dude with a noose around his neck and a paper bag over his head, right? Very cool. Like Villa did an amazing job designing these characters. They are all super cool looking villains. They are, of course, led by that almost serpentine looking figure that you see. And her name is the Meridium Diadem, and she only wants to consume. Very cool concept, right? I love the designs of the characters. But if it feels like I could also be talking about the Black Order, right, it's because I could also be talking about the Black Order, right? This is very much cut in that mold. Seems like we've been here before, but they are attacking Earth, right? And so they are doing some insanely treacherous things for the thing that is coming, right? They are essentially just kind of like the Black Order were the Gophers for Thanos. It's a little bit of what they're doing here, right? You see a new design for Iron Man, who has a very black suit. It's kind of Blue Beetle-esque, to be honest. But these people, these bad guys, these villains are wrecking shop all over the world, and they're just breaking things, right? They don't seem to have a rhyme or reason for what they want, other than to destroy the world and cause chaos. And the Avengers aren't having it. They're having to spring into action and try to stop this. But in order to stop this, because these folks are a global threat, they have to split up the team. And Carol jumps in and does a really good job thinking about what the strengths of each person is and sending them to the right place. So she has this moment of leadership, this comeuppance, that is going to be really important to her character and really drive home that she deserves to be in the driver's seat of the team. In the 4th issue, you see Captain America and T'Challa have made their way into space to the city, to this the impossible city, to figure out what's going on and what it is and how to stop it. And basically, they want to blow it up and trap these guys and stop their source of power. They realize that the impossible city is sentient in and of itself. It's a character in and of itself, which I think from a narrative device is really cool. As somebody who's a fan of Southern Gothic literature, I like when your setting becomes a character. But things aren't looking great for our team by the end of the story. The cards have flipped, right? These characters, these villains, the Ashen Combine are like gods unto themselves, and they just kind of overwhelm the team because they've split them up, right? So by the end of that, we're at a point to where, Thor and Iron Man have been like eaten and molded into the cities. They can't do anything. The Dead has capitalized by force of numbers and taken Wanda out. They do something I didn't really. Can we just let Wanda live? Right, like just for a minute, like the voice gets in her head, and all of a sudden, it's it's the villain that's living inside her. That this creature, the spirit that lives inside her, that we've all seen before, that manifests, and it's the spirit of doubt. She's the living embodiment of this grimoire tome now that we see, right? So, but it starts to eat at her, making her doubt herself and wondering if what she's seeing is real, and kind of breaking her spirit again. And it's just like leave my girl alone. So we see by the end of issue 4, the tables have turned for our heroes, and they're a broken team and broken spirits. And I think what we're going to see is T'Challa have to do something that is going to have to earn the trust of his people, but they're going to have to let him do something that they're not comfortable with. And that's dealing with the impossible city. So I'm curious to see what issue 5 does. I think Villa's art's amazing, right? And the colors on this book do everything. Blee is not to be fucked with when it comes to colors. That dude is making his mark. It is fantastic. The character designs, very similar to, maybe a little bit more cartoonish than what we see from Sean Isaacs. It's not Pepe Larraz, but it's in that same kind of vein, I think, a little bit. Like I said, maybe a little bit more cartoony. It's beautiful, though. Rendered very well. I'm very much enjoying this. Overall, my complaints with the quote unquote we've been here before-ness of the story and that we get in the 2nd and 4th issues, it's leagues better than what we were getting before. This feels like an Avengers story. It really does. It feels like an Avengers story. The things that I would like to see, though, I would like to see this. I mean, the characters are on the mark. The voice is right. The art is beautiful. The villains are on point. The stakes are high. I would like to see us to allow the Avengers to stop having global impacting, universe destroying villains all the time. Let me see the Avengers, and what makes the Avengers cool is they can handle that, right? We trust them to handle that. They can also stop a robbery on Yancey Street. No crime is beneath them. Like, no villain is too small for them to step up and be the Avengers for, right? I want to see more than that. I want to see more of that. Bring us back down to earth. Ground these characters. Show us why they defend our cities. Show us why they have the right to defend us globally or universally. But some of my favorite villains are street level guys, right? And they're the ones that the Avengers, show me the Wrecking Crew, but take them seriously, right? I want to see more of that. I'm hoping we get there, and maybe this is just the first arc. But again, this is one of the characters that they deal with, very much a Metatron figure that lives off worship that you're seeing right now. The design aspect of this is phenomenal. It's through the roof. So very happy with where we're at. Even if it doesn't meet all my wish list.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, like I said, I was impressed with it, and the only thing I worry about is that this might just be a placeholder.
It could be,
and that's a shame, because I do think they're a team. A big team should be allotted a certain amount of time for a writer to get in there. But I'll echo you in terms of the art, how impressive it was. But Yeah,
I think this is Jed
I think
McKay's
he will.
moment, though. To that
Yeah.
end, I think Jed McKay has earned his right to lead a flagship book.
Yep.
And I do think this is his moment. Also, wanted to point out the issue 4. We get a, in all the issues, but you get a John Romita nod in all of the issues from this particular month.
Yeah.
Since John Romita passed away, very good nod to him. So I think that was great to see too.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I'm going to go to a team that's from the distinguished competition. And if you've been following comics, it's actually a really good time to be a Titans fan.
Yeah.
Because you do have Tom Taylor and Nicola Scott's wonderful Titans, great things that are going on with Nightwing. I'm not going to be talking about this book, but I do think people should look out for World's Finest Teen Titans, which is written by Mark Waid with art by, forget his first name, Lupacino. Is it Raphael? I can't remember. But this grows out of some of the flashback stories in World's Finest and does a bit of a retcon with the team, adds Bumblebee to the classic 60s lineup, but really solid. I don't want to talk about this book until it's a little further in because there was a development in the first issue and I honestly don't know who the hell that character is at the end. So I want to get a few more books before I can talk about it. But this is tied into something that would otherwise be a geekette. I have something else to talk about, but Steve, I think you have 2 graphics here. The book I want to talk about is Tales of the Titans #1, and this is the main cover. Starfire is the member of the Titans that's profiled here. If you're familiar with the classic Wolfman and Perez Teen Titans, there was a 4-issue miniseries in 1982 where each of the newer members had their spotlight issue, and this does something. It basically repeats the formula. Why I'm talking here that this does tie into what would be Geekette is from former guest on the show and friend of the show, Brad Taylor. I received, and I'm so happy about this. Steve, if you want to go to the next cover, I got the Alex Ross variant from San Diego Comic-Con. I don't know if you've been following what's going on with Alex Ross, but he and DC kind of agreed to see other people. So the only DC covers that he's doing right now are ones that are available through Alex Ross Art, and they're very often convention exclusives. And here we have his recreation of the new Teen Titans #1 cover by George Perez, and I absolutely love this cover, and I have one in my goofy little hands. Also, something he sent me, and if you know what Brad's day job is, this is a Justice League promotional comic from the Warner Brothers Studio Tour, and has a story that's unique to that. So thank you very much, Brad. And also, Brad does have a new podcast with Chris Garrettson, Bradzilla, and Chris Conk's Kaiju Club. And I will be on there in the future. I think I'm talking about Yangarib, though I did kind of mainline some Gamera recently, so I might advocate for something else. But going back to Tales of the Titans, the writers of the stories, they are Shannon Hale and her husband Dean Hale. And if that's a familiar name comic-wise, it's from her work on, actually their work together on, what's the adjective for Squirrel Girl? Unforgettable Squirrel Girl? Mm-hmm. Okay. And also Diana, Queen of the Amazon, Princess of the Amazons, which was the backup in over, I think, like the last 2.5-3 years in the main Wonder Woman title. So they're the writers on that. She is a fascinating character, very prominent young adult author, but she's also Mormon, but she's a Mormon that's on the cusp of what's a very growing movement within that religion of advocating for gender equality and LGBT rights. Probably the most famous proponent of that is Dan Reynolds, who's the lead singer of Imagine Dragons, and there's a great documentary on him about that. So there's actually a huge movement within Mormonism to kind of modernize in terms of their outlook on certain social issues. But doesn't really touch on the. I just thought I'd mention that, but it doesn't touch on the story here. So what we have in Tales of the Titans, and also I have to give some props to the artist, who is Javier Rodriguez. The story that we have here is, and also just this cover is by Nicholas Scott. And I believe she's doing the main covers for all 4 of the issues. It's very much in the lines of the original Tales of the New Teen Titans mini, where in that one they went camping. In this one, they're just hanging around the New Titans Tower in Bloodhaven and talking about stuff. And this issue really addresses Starfire's reputation as a hothead, and where her problems with keeping her emotions in control come from. The one thing I thought was fascinating, though, you do hear the Teen Titans cartoon voice for Starfire. There's certain passages in the story where it has to be that voice. It just has to be. But it's a more adult version of that character. And what happens in this story is there's the Titans are fighting what's effectively like a stock threat from Queen Bee, but there's another mission with that Oracle, Barbara Gordon, thinks Starfire should go off on her own for, while the Titans handle everything else with Queen Bee. And it involves a spaceship that's crashed, and it turns out it's a Tamaranian colony. And it involves 2 sisters who are here on a mission, and they decide to come and get Princess Coriander. Now, Princess is a problematic issue for her, because she's lived on Earth for a long time, and she hasn't felt like an alien princess in a long time. And almost everybody calls her that. And she's kind of like, that's one of her triggers, essentially. But she goes off with the sister, and if you know Starfire's history, she had a very tumultuous relationship with, but it's a fairly kind way of putting it, with her sister Blackfire. She goes off with the sisters, and it turns out that there is a series of booby traps, almost landmines, that are on the colony, and they're affecting the livestock, which doesn't seem like to be, a huge issue. But with Tamaranian culture, since the planet's blown up at this point, that there are only these outposts that still exist. It's important for them to, hold on to their farming culture, to hold on to some of their other aspects of, their regular social life. And she goes to assist them and finds out a lot about herself. And in the end, she saves the day with the Titans mission, and the story ends with a food fight. It really was a really cute, I don't want to say cute, it's a cute ending, but it touches on a lot of things, like her apprehension of actually working with Barbara, since they share a romantic past with Dick Grayson in common. And it was just a really well balanced issue, and I'm really psyched to see how Beast Boy and Cyborg and Raven are treated in these issues, because as far as I'm concerned, given the right writers, all of those characters could lead their own book. Some have in the past, but I do think that there's so much robust development for each of them that they all could be headliners. And when they do have a spotlight like this, it's that kind of is testimony to that. So really like this Tales of the Titans #1, starring Starfire.
And it's and like it says on there, it's a 4 issue, so each issue is going to take one of the main Titans. Okay, interesting.
Yep.
Right.
Bill, you remember a few weeks ago where you made a confession and shocked the world and said you hadn't read Planetary?
Here we go. I'm ready.
I've never, as much as I love George Perez, I've never read the Teen Titans.
Okay, well, I can handle that because you're like a youngin'. And I am confident if it was contemporary, you would have gobbled it up.
It's on my list. Like, it's going to be one of the next 2 or 3 omnibuses that I buy and start reading. That's very much
the only Okay, so I also, all right, so this is my history with New Teen Titans. December of 1980 was when I got out of comics. At that point, I think there were like 6 or 7 issues published. I had them, but I hadn't read them because I was just getting out of comics. When I got back into comics in 85, that was my first back issue binge. I had to get everything. It was like a matter of like 5 weeks where I had at that point I think there were 55 issues or so. I had to get everything because as I got into it and was sampling issues here and there, I'm like, oh my god, this is the comic I always wished for growing up. This is the comic I always wished for. I don't think you're gonna have that same experience, but I think you will have. You'll see what the big deal is. Let's put it that way. Especially, for someone who's like yourself and knows history and knows where things fall in time. The one thing I would suggest to you that after you're done with that, tackle Crisis on Infinite Earths. Yeah, I would do that. But I think you're in for a great ride, and you'll see, there's so many. Whether it's Deathstroke or Brother Blood or Doom Patrol or so many other elements. Hive is in there. There's stuff we're still talking about today and that are still at the forefront today. And I'm confident it's something you will enjoy. And to me, that's really when George Perez became George Perez.
Well, and you don't have to twist my arm very hard to look at George Perez art at all. So I've never read it as much as I love him. And that's one. I've read Sirens, but I've never read Teen Titans.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's one thing. Have you read Crimson Plague? And not read New Teen Titans?
No, I have not.
Okay. Okay. That's all right. We'll get to it at some point. And
very soon.
So many easy ways to read it right now. So, okay. So, Steve, I guess you're going to take the indie flag here. So, why don't you tell us about something that is in that bucket?
So, something that's been hyped up, I would say, for probably like the past 4 or 5 months, has been a venture that was started by several ex-Comixology executives and editors, and that is a new publishing group, publishing experience, publishing team that goes by the name Distillery with no vowels. So it's just Distillery. And kind of early on, I was thinking about like, okay, this is starting to sound a little bit like Bad Idea, and I hope they don't go in that direction where it's just going to be like, okay, we're going to make we're going to have like a really great stable of writers and artists putting together these really high premium books, and no one's going to be able to buy them. We're going to make it so hard to find them, to purchase them, used. There's no back issue market. We'll refuse to to allow these to be sold as a secondary market item, and we'll never reprint. So that kind of like PTSD about Bad Idea, I was wary. But as we've been getting closer, and of course they kind of did a big coming out during San Diego Comic-Con to kind of present their ideas, what they're going to be doing here. Their plans are pretty. I'd say they're pretty ambitious. Right off the bat, they're looking at 8 new titles for their publishing group, and the way that they're going to be basically presenting the teams, maybe not necessarily the titles themselves, but like the maybe short stories that whet your appetite for the subjects of those new series. They put out something called The Devil's Cut. And this is the jock cover. So this is cover A. They've had a ton of beautiful covers. I have a just like example of this one, and then of course this one here by Franco Villa. What's really interesting is that they kind of allowed some of the lead artists for each of the stories and each of the groups to kind of come up with something that might indicate what type of book they're going to be writing. And there's a beautiful book by Becky Cloonan and then by Tula Lote. So there's some really great covers there. It just came out yesterday, which is the 30th of August when we're filming this on the 31st. And it apparently it's had some really good sales. So what are they doing with this? Well, this is it's a pretty large format, very premium quality book that is filled with multiple short stories. So it treats itself like an anthology or a sampler, essentially. And it gives all of those creative teams the chance to just kind of highlight what kind of book they're going to be writing, or something really interesting to kind of show off, like, hey, we are into this into this idea, we're into this kind of publishing venture. And by names, I'll just go through them because they list them pretty well. We've got Brian Azzarello, we've got Ram V, we've got Scott Snyder and James Tinney IV, Joelle Jones, Ariella Cristantina, Tula Lote, of course, and Becky Cloonan, Mirka Andolfo, who I know I'm butchering her name, Stephanie Phillips. I mean, there's just such a great Jamie McElvey. Like, we've got a really great stable of creators here. And the stories that they put together, most of them are, 4 pages, 6 pages long. And they sort of like highlight something really interesting. This is a page here from Shepherd, which is a story that is put out by Mark Bernardin and Ariella Cristantina. And it's essentially just a pitch. This is a future colony ship manufacturer, and the one of the lead designers, lead engineers, his wife is dying, and he's providing, it's flashing back between him doing this presentation for the colony ship producer, as well as at his wife's deathbed, and just kind of saying, like, hey, our biggest thing with colony ships is that we have pirates that attack, and these colonists are, of course, all in stasis. We can't really hire like security guards to just be awake and like have 50 years of their lives go. What are we paying them for? They're not going to be able to spend money on it, so it's just like they're just going to get old and die while they're guarding these colonists. So instead, he's going to create an android that's going to protect all of them. And in the space of this, he's demonstrating, he's showing the images of the android like taking out these targets and everything, and it's really great. They'll be personable, they'll be caring, loving, and protective. And in the last panel, the last page, this very short story, his wife is like, "Oh, that's wonderful. What are they going to look like?" He models them after her. So it's just a really sweet, great sort of future text story, 6 pages and done. And it has that emotional resonance already built into that. And this again is just kind of an example. Great short story to show off what they're going to be doing.
The art is the art's fantastic on that. That top image, not so much the bottom panels, but the top larger panel almost looks like John Davis Hunt, who I'm a huge fan of.
The depth in it is great.
Yeah. I like that a lot.
And then we have like another story here. This one is these panels are actually from A Blessed Day, and this is Mirka and I can't pronounce her name right.
And Andolfo. Yeah, no, you said it right the first time. Mirka Andolfo.
Yep, Mirka Andolfo. And then also, she did the writing, she did the art, and also Fabio Amelia Arancia and Steve Orlando also contributed. Steve Orlando actually with some of the translation duties on this, because I believe she wrote this originally in Italian. But this is it's an interesting sort of image. This person is getting ready for the day. They're clearly demonic. They're not truly human, but they are getting ready for the day to greet the human world by changing their appearance just enough so that they don't get found out. And it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. It's kind of interesting, but really it's a situation. And she sets us up in, again, 6 to 8 pages, beautiful art, but the narration on it is, hey, God and the devil killed each other. The angels all, vamoosed, and basically we're just left with the demons. And the demons got to heaven, and they're like, "This is it." Oh, but there's like a worship machine that just feeds off of the worship and the prayers of humanity and just provides power. So they're like, how can we use this? Knowing humanity, they essentially this gentleman here is a priest slash agent, and his lead client is a singer, pop star, and also saint. So people are truly devoted and worshiping her, and this is providing energy, power, whatever, back to the demonic hordes. It's just such a really wacky, interesting concept. It makes you want to read more, and of course, the art is there's equal parts sort of like a little bit goopy and really beautiful, but also edgy. Really, really fun. Again, very different feel from Shepherd. And then we've also got some other ones. We've got some openly humorous stories that are in the vein of like maybe a Mark Russell. That's really great. We've also got some more, I'd say, visceral traditional horror stories. Jock, of course, who's going to be the first. We'll be providing the first book that comes out. I believe it's called. Oh gosh. It does come out next month in October, and it's just completely
Don't worry
crossed my
about it.
head.
Just keep going.
Yeah. But basically, the short story that he writes for this, Stowaway, kind of gives you that feel of, okay, this is kind of like a prequel. This little short story is a prequel to what I'm going to be doing in that book. And it's very very, very unique way of getting people excited about what's coming. These are not just like pages from those books. These are truly either, unique stories set in the world that those creators are doing, unique stories that just show off, something that the creators wanted to do that isn't going to be related to what they're doing with Distillery, but they just wanted to, hey, I can put this in the book. I've always wanted to do this. And then others which are just like, here, we're giving you a taste. This is like, pages 0, 0, 0, 0 of our, of our big story that we're going to be showing. So again, there's going to be 8 titles. The first one comes out next month by Jock. And then there's another title in November, and I believe so on and so forth. There'll be one new title over the next 8 months. But pretty cool. If you want to, I recommend picking it up. It's really just a really interesting thing to have. And if you're interested in any of the creative teams here, I think it's a good anthology collection to have. Period. Even if you don't want to read any of the other books that Distillery is coming out with, but you know what, this is a really good first taste of what they've got going, and I'm excited. So
great.
Yeah.
I know we have to wrap up because we've been almost 2.5 hours here. But Steve, just 2 quick questions, given the personnel that put this book together. Do you know if this stuff was originally earmarked, or some of them were originally earmarked for Comixology originals?
I think there's some possibility that some of these may have been played around with that, but I have a very strong feeling that most of these are concepts that could not really have happened post Amazon Comixology, and I think that these the ex-executives, ex-publishers from Comixology, they took the knowledge that they got from that in the digital realm and are putting this forward in the in the print realm.
Okay, great. And also, what's the price point on that?
This one is a hefty $10, but actually it's pretty worth it. Premium, 88 pages, definitely great.
88 pages for $10. That's beautiful spot varnish on there too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And this is just, and again, they're all this glossy, but there's definitely a good mix of covers there, playing with the theme of the big D.
Okay, as I mentioned, we're up against the clock, and we're going to start wrapping the show up. And now we're not going to get to the end unless we show our geek gets first. So, Steve, Mr. Never Has Anything, do you have something this week?
Nope.
Okay. You didn't even change your poster.
No, I actually left this up because it's really cool. So yeah,
Okay.
Next time I'll change it.
Okay, all right, Caleb, how about you?
So I'm wearing my Geek Get, and I also have for those of you who can't, who want to see a better picture of it, I sent Steve a graphic. I don't know if we have that or not, but the last time we recorded, we had our brother Brian on, and he was talking about a design that his partner Brandon had made for Florida, and it said "Florida is for everyone," and it had an orange on there with the pride flag on the back of it. And I jokingly, at least from my end, meant it as a joke, said, "Hey, tell Brian to make one for Arkansas that says Arkansas is for everyone, and put a possum on it, and I'll buy it." And he did. So I bought it. So this is kind of an in the family situation, but I think since then he's also made one for Texas and I think he made one for South Carolina or North Carolina. So he's done a really cool thing for everybody. But I bought this. I bought stickers. I've got one in the back of my car. I have this awesome t-shirt. And yeah, it's got the progress flag with a possum on it that says Arkansas is for everyone. There is not another shirt that is more me design in existence at all. This is my favorite thing now. So that's my Geek Get for the week. Thank you, Brandon. You are amazing. I heart you big.
Nice.
Progress possum, basically.
Okay, well, there's your Geek Get. You got Jasper there. Okay.
Jasper makes an appearance.
Okay. Steve, I have a graphic that I gave you for this, and this is my Wolf of the Week, and here it is on vinyl. And this is the latest album by The National, the first 2 pages of Frankenstein. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Yeah, go ahead.
Last week. It was last week.
Okay, it would have been last week.
Yeah.
I went to see The National and Patti Smith as the special guest at Madison Square Garden, and it was a fantastic show. I've had a rotten history in the last few years with The National, with the dates, and they either sell out ridiculously quick because they are a New York area band, or I'm on the road. And it just, like, the last few years, after seeing them multiple times for an album, to not see them tour behind albums has been frustrating, but not this time. And this particular album, it has guest appearances by Sufjan Stevens, Phoebe Bridgers, Taylor Swift, and they have not jumped the shark yet. You know, they're still at the top of the game, and it was a great show, and this is a great album, and that's my Geek Get. And you know, it's a little frustrating with vinyl right now. Sometimes the most affordable versions you can get of an album are at the concerts. So it's a pain in the, you know, because I'm like, oh, is it still going to be there when I, you know, get to the merch table at the end, you know, because you don't want to be like holding the damn album during the concert. But it worked out. So that's my Geek Get. All right, we're going to wrap this show up. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week. In the bear community, if you find a particular fella attractive, you woof at him, or some other interjections. And we do something very similar. We woof at something that may be a film or a TV program or a comic book or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling or supporting. I'll start, as I always do, with Steve. Steve, what is your Woof of the Week?
My Wolf of the Week is Starfield, which just dropped for those of us who have early access at 8 o'clock tonight Eastern time. So I did already play around a little bit with this before the show. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, and I can't wait to really get into it. And yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm a big fan of Skyrim, and you know, Fallout 4 is okay, but I'm just super excited for this. I want something sci-fi that I get to play for hundreds of hours, and this will be it. So my Xbox will explode at some point.
Okay,
in the next
so
couple of
just
weeks.
Provide that caveat: it is a video game.
It's a video game. Yes,
Okay,
it is out for Xbox and
so
PC.
Right,
Yes,
great. Over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your Wolf of the Week?
All right, my Wolf of the Week is going to bring us down a little bit, but it goes out to a spectacular person that we lost this week. And I sent Steve a graphic for this. Hopefully we can get that. So if you've ever been into any of the gay bars in Macon, Georgia, or Central Georgia, or Atlanta, or anything else, there is a good chance that you have seen this drag queen perform. This is Tangerine Summers, right? Tangerine was an amazing presence in Central Georgia, Savannah, just all over the place. Fantastic performer, lovely person, wonderful human being. Tange passed away last night, and so I wanted to use my moment to give her the Wolf of the Week, not only because of just who she was as a person, but also for what she did. She was a drag performer in Middle Georgia for over 50 years. She could do Tina Turner almost as good as Tina did. Her cover of Proud Mary was amazing, right? There are also rumors and stuff that she has performed in drag while Little Richard's was still performing and playing the piano for. She's done numbers with Little Richard playing the piano for. That's the legend, right? I don't know if that's true. That's what we've heard. When I moved to Middle Georgia in 2010 and went to the drag show for the first time, I was still in the closet for the most part, right? I was a construction worker. It was still a dangerous thing for me to go out. Tange welcomed me into that world. She gladly took my tips, right? But she was always a sweetheart. Was very fun to watch perform, and made me feel like I had a place, right? And so did the entire kind of bar family down there. So there's a lot of them that I could get into that have since passed. But I wanted to note this passing. Rest in peace, Tange. You were a beautiful soul, and the world's a little bit less brighter without you in it. But we'll see you again soon. So just love to everybody who loved Tange.
Okay, thank you for that, Caleb. All right, for my Wolf of the Week, it's going to be a Broadway show. I'm slowly getting back into seeing theater, and you have the playbill, Steve, if you want to put that up. The show I most recently went to is The Shark is Broken, that is playing at the Golden Theater right in Schubert Alley. And The Shark is Broken tells the story of Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw as they are waiting for the shark to get fixed during various points of shooting Jaws in late 1974. The actor who plays Robert Shaw is actually Ian Shaw, his son. And let me tell you, when he comes on stage, it's like you're seeing Quint, like it right in front of you. It's uncanny. Just as it's the same situation with Alex Brightman, who plays Richard Dreyfuss better than Richard Dreyfuss plays Richard Dreyfuss. If you're a fan of Jaws, this is mandatory viewing. But it's just a wonderful character study of three actors who are very different, but at the same time, all share an occupation and a craft and an understanding of what their role in that particular industry is. The actor who plays Roy Scheider, while doesn't reach that level of, oh my God, I'm seeing the actual performer, is still excellent. And that's Colin Donnell. If that's a familiar name to comic book people, it's because he played Tommy Merlin on Arrow for many years. This is playing, I believe, until November is the current run. I would not be surprised if this group goes for like a tour with some of the same actors, because again, Ian Shaw originated this on the West End, and he's also a co-writer of the play. And it's a great night out at the theater. Only 90 minutes long, no intermission, but it's a very full 90 minutes, and I absolutely loved it. So that's my Wolf of the Week. The Shark is Broken on Broadway.
I just love
Broadway.
Yeah.
The Shark is Broken. Damn it.
Yeah. Broadway doesn't go for booze and dope. The poor dears. Okay. So, all right. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the X and the Tumblr's dead. You can find us on the X and the Instagram and the Threads as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can do this. Let me get this right. You can do that through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. I got the email. Spotify's a go.
Yes, finally.
And
Woo.
What's the other one?
Amazon.
So, for anybody who listened to us through Stitcher Radio for the number of years that, and there was a brief period where we were actually Stitcher exclusive. Thank you, and I'm gonna miss that app tremendously. But hope you're finding a new home for this a new method of obtaining us, and there are also many other podcasting platforms that you'd be able to access us. And if you want to, you can also go right to Libsyn. That's always a possibility. That's the link that we provide. So though we are losing Stitcher Radio, there's still various methods to get us regularly. But if you are one of those people that listen to us through Stitcher and are now listening to us through something new, we just really wanted to thank you, because that was our largest audience for many, 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 many years. So thank you. If you want to write to us, go ahead.
I was going to say, you can also go back and watch the live streams on YouTube. So if you're watching this live and you want to see some of our other live shows, pull up YouTube, watch the live. You can watch them there.
Yep, and
we've got what, almost three years worth of
like and subscribe. And also, if you're going to Apple Podcasts, since we are a queer podcast, naturally we got review bombed. So negate that bigoted fucker. All right, good reviews in there. And if you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. Not exactly sure what our schedule will be for September, because I know I have a lot of Thursday out dates, but we'll talk about it amongst ourselves. But we'll be getting back to you in September. So until that time, I'm Billy Z.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion. If you're listening to the audio version, we will be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof.